missing children dominated the headlines. One of them was Leonie Keating, and you may remember we featured the hunt for her killer on our October programme. The bodies of Leonie and 2 other children were found soon after they went missing, and arrests were made. But there was no trace of the 4th child, 6-year-old Barry Lewis from South London. His whereabouts remained a mystery for 3 months, until December, when his body was discovered in a field in Essex. Tonight, police are disclosing new evidence about the case in the hope that you might help catch Barry's killer. Our reconstruction begins in London at the market close to where he lived. Sunday morning, 15th of September, at East Street Market in Walworth. The stalls were busy with shoppers as usual. Just 200 yards away from the end of the market, at the junction with Dawes Street, Barry was staying temporarily at the house of friends, the Leightons, while his mother was waiting for rehousing by the council.
British diplomats in Moscow.
That day, Barry had lunch at the house with Denise Leighton and her children before going out to play with 7-year-old Jackie.
Are you coming out to play?
Yes. Where are you going?
I'm going to out in front.
All right then. Ta-ra.
Bye.
Barry and Jackie went down East Street to Trafalgar House in Bronte Close to play with their friend Michelle. Michelle's mother, Mrs. Ford, kept an eye on them as they played outside the flats. Then Michelle and Barry went up to the flat, leaving Jackie playing downstairs.
Get down from there before you break your neck.
Barry decided to go home, and Jackie went with him to the corner of Bronte Close.
All right, I'll see you later. I'm going home now. Bye.
Barry walked on down Blackwood Street towards East Street. What happened next is a mystery. By 4 o'clock on East Street, the market was gone, and Barry too had completely vanished. For 3 months, nothing was heard of him. Then in December, his body was found in a field 25 miles away. 16th of September, the day after Barry disappeared. On the road known as the Crooked Mile, just outside Waltham Abbey in Essex, a man had run out of petrol. He left his car at the entrance to Travers Piggery. Police have now been able to establish that the boy he was carrying was almost certainly Barry Lewis. He seemed sleepy and listless, but he was alive. The nearest garage, Abbey petrol station, was 3 miles down the road.
What's the can take?
About £2 worth.
Right, I'll pay for it now.
Thank you. Run out of petrol?
Yeah, up a good mile.
Can you give this man in the child a lift back to his car up the Crooked Mile?
I'm sorry, I'm going the other way, Chingford.
There should be somebody who'll take you.
It's okay. I'll get there.
The man walked a few hundred yards up the Crooked Mile and stood hitchhiking at a junction opposite Lee Valley Nurseries. Seeing the boy and the petrol can, a local man on his way home stopped to help.
Can I give you a lift?
Yeah, please.
Where's your car?
It's in the entrance to a farm, just up the road on the right.
Would it be better to put the child on the back seat?
No, you'll be all right here.
child okay?
He's a bit poorly. He didn't sleep well last night.
The driver noticed that the man seemed edgy and reluctant to talk. He drove him up the road past the pink house at Clapgate Lane.
Here it is. Over there.
The driver took them back to Travers Piggery. He remembers that the man's car was a red hatchback, similar to a Talbot Horizon. It was in a tatty condition.
They managed now?
Yeah, it's okay. I'll be all right now.
Well, Barry's body was found just a mile away 3 months later. Superintendent Hatfull is leading the hunt for his killer. Perhaps you could take us through on the map where the man and boy went that day on the 16th of September.
Yes, the garage is in the centre of Waltham Abbey and is approximately 3 miles away from where the red car was parked and about 1.5 miles away from where the boy's body was eventually found.
Which was near the pink house in Clapgate Lane?
Yes, on the bridle path.
Right. The car seemed fairly distinctive. Do you think he might be still driving that car?
There's a possibility he may still have it. It was a red hatchback car, most probably a Talbot Horizon, described as about 5 to 7 years of age and in a fairly tatty condition.
Now, we saw the man on the film leave the car, and then the next we saw him was walking into Abbey petrol station. Somebody surely must have seen him on that 3-mile route carrying the boy. He must have looked quite conspicuous. Do you think he walked all the way carrying the boy anyway?
No, not only do I believe that somebody saw him, I'm positive somebody picked them up and gave them a lift. I desperately want to trace that motorist and the car that he himself was using when that happened.
What about the petrol station itself? Do you think there were many people there to see him?
Yes, it was a very busy evening in the petrol station, rush hour. We know that there were several other customers getting petrol, and in particular, there was one man who was in fact asked by the petrol attendant whether he could give the man and the boy a lift back along the Crooked Mile, and he declined because he was on his way to Chingford, which is opposite direction. We also desperately wish to find that man.
Right. Now, that incident was 24 hours after Barry had first disappeared. What do you think happened in those intervening 24 hours?
I'm convinced that Barry was certainly alive for 24 hours after he was kidnapped in the hands of his abductor. There's every likelihood that he was kept in that motor vehicle in the Epping Forest or South Essex or Hertfordshire area, and we want anybody who can remember seeing the unlikely of that man with the small boy and the car to come forward and speak to us.
Once again, can we have your description of the man? We have a video fit.
Yes, he was about 30 to 35 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall, normal build. He's described as having a lined face or a wrinkled complexion, more than perhaps his years should show.
And he's a local man, is he?
Every indication from the way he spoke and the way he acted seems to show that he knew that area and he had some local knowledge of the places we've mentioned.
Right. Now, it's 4 months since Barry disappeared now. How urgent do you think it is that you find him?
It's vital that we find this man. It was a brutal and callous murder of a small boy by a man who went out looking for his victim, and having found him, I'm positive that he knew what he was going to do to him and how his end would be. I'm absolutely certain we will catch him, not only for what he did to Barry Lewis, but because we have the very real fear that having done this once, he will set out to do it again.
Mr. Hatfull, let's hope that somebody can help. If you can help in any way, please do ring us at Crimewatch on 01 811 8055. Or if you prefer, you can ring police direct at Chingford on 01 529 8666. That's 01 529 8666.
Tells the story of a 25-year-old woman who lived alone in a bedsit at Tunbridge Wells in Kent. Wendy Knell was murdered there one Monday night in June. What's especially tragic about this case is that several people had seen prowlers in the district, but they hadn't reported them to the police. And there's a mystery about Wendy that maybe you can solve. The date is Monday, June the 22nd. Number 14, Guildford Road in Tunbridge Wells that Monday morning. At 8:30, as usual, Wendy Knell left her bedsit for her 15-minute walk to work.
Right. All you've got to do is check the prices on them and put them into the calculator.
Wendy was manageress of Super Snaps in Camden Road. That Monday, a new assistant had started, and Wendy took her through the routine.
Make sure they've got K34 on all of them.
And what's that?
That's the shop number.
Right.
Put them in alphabetical order, and then into the main trays.
Wendy was good at her job and happy there, friendly and efficient, and popular with all the staff.
All right. Yeah. Call me if you need me.
Okay, then.
Wendy visited a customer, then at about 1:15, went to her bank and building society. Did she meet anyone else? After work, at 6 o'clock, Wendy went home to collect some laundry. Her bedsit was tiny and run down. In fact, she disliked it so much she rarely allowed anyone to visit, and she spent very little time there. When she left the window open. In fact, it wouldn't close because the latch had been painted over. There was easy access to the back of her house, which was divided into 9 small bedsits. Her ground floor room backed onto a poorly lit alleyway. There'd been several nighttime prowlers and peeping toms, and 24 hours earlier there'd been a strange incident at a house less than 50 yards away. A 19-year-old was alone in her second-floor flat on that Sunday evening.
Yes?
You shouldn't leave your window open, especially in the bedroom.
This is a Crimewatch video fit of the man, compiled by the witness. By 8 o'clock on the Monday evening, Wendy was finishing her washing in the Rustall laundrette, a couple of miles from her home.
Fred Astaire is dead.
Wendy's boyfriend, Ian, lived close by with his mother, and for the rest of the evening, the three of them watched TV together.
Army missiles which could have got into the hands of Ulster extremists. 4 men.
10:30, back in the alleyway behind Guildford Road. Someone who lived in the same house as Wendy saw a man trying to peep through a window in the house directly opposite. The prowler watched for some minutes before he was disturbed. The police weren't called. Three-quarters of an hour later, at 11:15, Wendy was taken home by her boyfriend, Ian. Wendy died from a blow to the head sometime before 5 a.m. Local residents recalled 2 events that night. At 12:30, a peeping Tom was spotted outside a house in nearby Grove Hill Road. And at 1:10 in Guildford Road, neighbours remember a car, possibly a blue Talbot Horizon, having difficulty starting outside Wendy's house.
At 12 o'clock, BBC Radio Kent News with Michael Bath.
Police today issued a fresh appeal for witnesses following the murder of the Tunbridge Wells shop manageress Wendy Knell earlier this week. Wendy, who was 25, was found battered to death in her bedsit in Guildford Road.
2 days after Wendy's death, a new witness, a local shopkeeper, came forward with evidence which opened a whole new line of inquiry. Bits and Pieces is a second-hand goods shop specialising in collector's items. The owner believes Wendy was a regular visitor.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Come for your train, then?
Yes.
Over a period of 9 months, Wendy had visited the shop about once a fortnight, always to buy or look at model trains.
That'll be £4, then. Thank you very much.
How much are those trains up there?
Those are green ones?
Yes.
About £20.
Right. I'll come back for those.
Oh, righto.
Assuming it was Wendy, none of the trains she bought has ever been found. Wendy didn't keep them for herself, so to whom did she give them? Man in charge of seeking Wendy's killer is Richard Rickson. Was that Wendy?
Well, I want to be sure that the customer was Wendy Knell, and I would appeal to any viewer who recognises herself in that reconstruction to ring us tonight. If it was Wendy, then what was she doing with the trains? Who did she buy them for? Where are they now?
Now, she was in the habit of buying carriages, not locomotives. They were all 00 gauge, or their continental equivalent.
Yes, all Triang or Hornby make, and over a period of 9 months she bought perhaps a dozen of them. She purchased this model on the Friday before she died. It's a Fleischmann make. It's a German carriage, identical in every respect to this one apart from the colour. The one she bought was a single colour maroon.
Now, I gather that several things are missing from her flat, in particular her diary and her keys. Her diary, of course, would have her name in it, Wendy Knell. The keys are quite distinctive. This key ring is
yes,
very odd.
The key fobs she brought back from a recent holiday in Austria, and we certainly know that the brass Woman of the Year tag was attached to the key ring, as were the 2 keys you see in these.
Now, was her killer, do you think, someone she knew, or was this an opportunist crime? Do you know?
Well, I'm hoping that a telephone call tonight will answer that question for us.
The man who went to that woman's house nearby the night before and said, "You shouldn't keep your window open," that very odd thing
Very
to do.
strange
We've got a
incident.
video fed of him. Perhaps you could describe him to us.
Yes, that man is in his mid-20s. He's over 6 foot tall and very thinly built. He's got short, dark hair and a tidy moustache.
And that was about 6:30 on Sunday the 21st. Now, obviously, if that man is entirely innocent of the murder, he would do well to call you and
Yes,
say
he
so.
would. It's essential that we trace that man.
Right. Also, that car, that blue or possibly blue or greyish car that was outside her house about 1 o'clock on the morning that she died. Again, that might be entirely innocent. Whoever was driving a car away from Guildford Street in Tunbridge Wells that night ought to come forward.
Yes, we need to eliminate that. It was a light blue or grey Talbot Horizon. It left Guildford Road. Did anybody see it leaving Guildford Road? Or did you see it arrive near where you live sometime in the early hours of Tuesday, the 23rd of June this year?
Superintendent Rickson, thank you very much. Please do call us if you can help. It's terribly important. Call right now. Here's the number, 01811 8055. That's 01811 8055. Or you can dial the incident room at Tunbridge Wells. That's Tunbridge Wells 511 055. The code for Tunbridge Wells is 0892 511 055.
If you live in Kent and if you've brought any double glazing this year, you might be able to help solve our first case tonight. Since last Christmas, David Short had worked for Danem Windows as their East Kent representative. 10 weeks ago, on the evening of Thursday, the 22nd of September, he was murdered. Despite quite precise information about his movements that night, police have so far drawn only blanks in the search for his killer. Our reconstruction begins in the seaside town of Broadstairs, where David lived. Broadstairs is a popular holiday resort between Ramsgate and Margate on the southeast coast. Perched high above the town is Bleak House, which a century ago inspired Charles Dickens' novel. David Short was 36. He'd lived in Broadstairs for most of his life and had done a variety of jobs. Every day he exercised his dogs around the Ethel Road area, where for the past 9 months he'd lived with his common-law wife, Michelle. 2 years ago, David was working in a well-known local hotel as a barman. One night, a barmaid recalls there was a visit by 2 men.
Oi, mate, any more trouble from you, and I'll bleed and kill you. Have you got that?
What was that all about?
Nothing.
A week later, David reported to work with a swollen face and black eyes. David used to frequent various night spots in Margate and Ramsgate, and police are anxious to talk to anyone who may have seen him in these clubs. They'd also like to speak to somebody called Mags, who David met apparently while working as a barman. In January of this year, David left bartending and started selling double glazing, a job he'd done in the past.
Good afternoon. I called the other day, Danham Windows.
Oh, Mr. Short. Yes, we're expecting. Would you like to come in?
Thanks very much. How are the kids?
They're fine, thank you. Would you go through?
Thank you. Why don't I show you a couple of our brochures? This includes our latest top-of-the-range bestseller, which features an aluminium frame with a hardwood surround.
Over the years, David had worked for several companies. Perhaps he sold double glazing to you.
I'll just look at the frame, because that's coming out. Oh, no problem there. And measure up. Get you a quote in no time.
Business was going very well for David, and he bought a distinctive white Rover car. But if you saw the car recently, you almost certainly noticed the damage to the paintwork. About a month before his death, someone had vandalised his car with paint stripper while it was parked outside his home. Someone obviously had a grudge against him and knew exactly where he lived. Two weeks before David was murdered, a neighbour noticed a short, dark-haired man with a moustache arguing with David on his doorstep. She thought perhaps it had something to do with his business. On Thursday, the 22nd of September, the day David died, he returned home from an afternoon appointment to cook the evening meal. It was about 5:30 when he sat down to eat with Michelle and his mother, who'd come over for dinner. They had a discussion about the new house David and Michelle were hoping to buy together.
How do you think you're going to like living in Dickens Road then?
Oh,
until we've signed on that dotted line, I'm not taking anything for granted.
Don't worry. I went to the estate agents today. They've taken the sign down.
Yeah, they have. Oh, well, that's something.
Yeah.
We'll be in by Christmas.
I'm sure we will be in by Christmas.
So.
Across the road, a neighbour saw Michelle and David's mother leaving the house on their way to play bingo in Ramsgate. That was about 7 o'clock. 10 minutes later, she saw David leaving, smartly dressed and carrying a briefcase. His diary shows an appointment in Deal, and the witness remembers he sat in the car for a few minutes before driving off.
4 and 3, 43. 1 and 2, number 12. All the sixes, 66.
It was 9:15 when David returned home. There was a yellow Vauxhall Chevette parked across the road. It had broken down and the owner had gone off for help. At 9:15, just around the corner from David's home, a witness on St. Peter's Park Road saw a motorcyclist preparing to ride off. Police would like him to come forward. At about 9:20, the owner of the broken-down Chevette came back with his brother. They've told police that in the 20 minutes or so it took them to tow the car away, they don't remember seeing the white Rover. So had David gone out again? And if so, where? At about the same time, 1/4 mile away, another witness saw 2 men shouting in a car. The woman and child walking nearby may remember seeing the orange or red-coloured old-type saloon car. It stopped just around the corner, outside the Albion public house. At 9:45, David's mother and Michelle left the bingo hall in Ramsgate. In the 15 minutes it took them to get home, David was murdered. His body was lying on the pathway by 2 broken milk bottles. At about the same time, a man was seen running down this nearby alleyway. When the police and ambulance arrived, it was discovered that David had been sprayed in the face with CS gas and hit on the head twice with a heavy object.
Delta Alpha 30, Delta Alpha 30.
Well, in charge of this case is Detective Chief Inspector David Birchall. Mr. Birchall, what sort of man was David Short?
Well, to be frank, he wasn't very popular. He was a person who had had many threats made to him. 2 people, some 2 years prior to him being murdered, threatened him in the Castle Keep Hotel, where he worked, and shortly after that he was beaten up. A month before he died, someone poured paint stripper over his car, causing considerable damage, and we still don't know who did that. And the person who called on him 10 days beforehand, who was on his doorstep, who we still haven't traced, was arguing with him. We are interested in the 2 people at the Castle Keep and that man.
So it sounds as though there could be many possible motives for his death.
There are. We've investigated many things, but we're still not clear about what the actual motive is.
His social life seems to have been reasonably colourful.
Yes, indeed it was. He was a person who enjoyed himself and went around the nightclubs in Margate and Ramsgate.
And you wanted to find this person called Mags. Any clues on that?
We haven't. We know that he was friendly with a person called Mags. We've put appeals out locally, but we've had no response. Anyone by the name of Mags who was associated with David Short, we'd like to hear from.
Now, as I said in the film, CS gas was sprayed in David's face. Where could that have come from? Because it's illegal to sell it in this country.
It is indeed. There are 2 canisters here. They are obtainable in France, and we'd like to hear from anyone who knows of anyone who had possession of CS gas in that type of canister, particularly people from Kent. We'd also like to hear from a man, an anonymous caller, who called the incident room shortly after the murder. He told us that CS gas had been obtained in Dover to do a job in Margate. That man promised to come back to us. He hasn't, and we'd like to hear from him.
Right, please do call us. And finally, could you recap then on the several people who were seen near David's house on the night that he died?
Yes, as the appeal shows, we're looking particularly for 3 lots of people. There was a man on a motorcycle at 9:15 seen near to his house. We know that there were 2 men in a car who were arguing about a quarter of a mile away from his house, and a man was seen running away from the scene of the crime round about the time the ambulance arrived. He was in St. Peter's Park Road, Broadstairs.
So these people need to come forward, if only to be eliminated from your inquiries.
Yes, and we can assure we'll treat them with discretion if in fact they do come forward.
Right, they can save police a lot of time, wasted time, if you can come forward and be eliminated from the inquiries, and maybe you saw something significant. Just to remind you, it was Thursday, September the 22nd. If you can help Mr. Birchall and any of his team with any information at all, do please ring us. The number here to the studio is 01811 8055, or you can ring the incident room direct, and that number is 0843 225566. That's 0843, the code for Margate, 225566.
For our first reconstruction tonight, we go to Folkestone on the coast of Kent, but it's a case that could involve witnesses from anywhere in Britain, since Folkestone is a busy gateway to the continent and it's the entrance on the English side to the Channel Tunnel. Were you in Folkestone on Guy Fawkes night? If so, you might help solve the murder of a local cab driver. From the Channel Ferry Terminal, it's 5 miles up the coast to Hythe. On Saturday the 5th of November, as darkness fell and bonfires were lit, the pubs were unusually busy. The Fountain at the bottom of Horn Street was no exception. Mary Reid had been trying to help customers get home.
Hello? Could I order a taxi, please, at the Fountain? Half an hour's wait? Oh, I'm sorry. No, we'll have to try another company.
At 12:20, Mary finished work and set off home.
There was this taxi sitting in the lay-by, and I thought, oh, we've been trying all evening, and there's one sitting there.
But this one was empty, and it wasn't till next day that anyone discovered why.
When Derek Brann's taxi was found at this location, the back seat was covered in blood. There is no doubt, because of the amount of blood in the back seat of that taxi, that Mr. Brann is dead. This is now a murder inquiry. Our first priority now is to find the body.
Because of the metre fare on the taxi, the car has travelled something like 31.5 miles. The front wheels are covered in mud, so at the moment we are searching the Romney Marsh area. We have covered about a half of the area, but we are continuing our search there.
Nearly 2 weeks later, a man's body was found dumped beside the London-bound carriageway of the M20. Derek Brann was new to taxi driving. He was 48, married with 3 sons. He put in a great deal of time for the local Lions Club, raising money for charity and doing welfare work. His main job was as an insurance salesman, but lately he'd turned to taxi driving in the evenings and at weekends to earn a bit of extra cash. He worked for the Folkestone Taxi Company, based above a snack bar in Sandgate Road. He shared a cab, this red Nissan Bluebird, with 2 other drivers. Just after lunchtime on Saturday the 5th, Derek took over from Brian James for the afternoon and evening shift.
Hello, Brian. How was business this morning?
Not so bad, Derek, not so bad.
Good.
You should have a good night tonight.
I hope so, yeah.
Have a good night.
OK, thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Well, it's a very pleasant chat, really. I'd only known him for about 6 weeks since he'd been starting taxi driving.
I'll give it to you now, Mike. Safe ways, Mrs. Boone, because I'm going to talk to the opportunity upstairs again.
Right, Mike. Right, OK, Roger, on my way.
As it happened that particular afternoon we changed over, he did tell me how much he enjoyed the taxi driving, and if the insurance business got much worse, he was thinking of taking that full time.
Please.
Thank you.
It was a quiet afternoon on Guy Fawkes Day, and at about 8:30, Derek was home for supper.
Where are the boys?
Oh, Mark's out. Adrian and Aaron are upstairs. How was work?
Bit quiet.
What time will you be home tonight?
Oh, we're busy tonight. Probably about 3ish.
Oh, well, I won't wait up then.
No. Bye, love.
Bye.
Bye.
Folkestone Harbour. At 10 o'clock, outside the Burston Hotel, another taxi driver clearly remembers seeing Derek waiting in the rank.
Lane, Mike. Anybody else clearing out Sheraton, Martin, Charlie and Delver?
20 minutes later, Derek might have been seen again by the security guard on duty in Middleburg Square. He saw 2 men get into what he thinks was Derek's taxi.
Evening. Where to then, Gov?
Police know of no one who saw Derek after this.
We can only theorise about what happened, but it is possible that Derek took a fare to somewhere in the Folkestone area. When he's asked for the fare, he's been stabbed, and they've decided, in blind panic, that they must take him to a hospital. The only casualty hospital is in the Ashford area, and they've driven him up the motorway, the M20. It has become apparent to them that he was already dead, and we know that the taxi stopped where the body was dumped. I don't think that Derek himself drove this cab out of the area, because it was standard procedure for him to call into his control to say when he was leaving the Folkestone area. So I think we can safely bet that the offender has driven the taxi.
They know the taxi stopped where the body was dumped because it was noticed by a couple driving past.
What's it on his old bill? No, it's not. It's a taxi.
5 miles later, they saw the cab turn off at junction 10. At about the same time, a man was seen walking down the verge beside the hard shoulder, back in the direction of Folkestone.
We believe this man leaving the taxi was one of the attackers and has made his way down the motorway. Meanwhile, the taxi itself has been sighted sometime shortly after 11 in this area of the Romney Marsh.
I'm an ambulance driver who drives down through the marsh every night. And when I was driving along, didn't see many cars. And I come across a taxi moving slowly. I had to brake hard. I thought it was really unusual to see a Folkestone taxi out in the marsh.
The taxi headed back to Folkestone, and at about 11:15, a cab was seen at the bottom of Horn Street. It seemed to have overshot the road.
Lane. One at the JIB for Mr. Perrott. A couple of minutes again.
Joe Finney, Derek Brown had been stabbed 34 times, I gather.
That's correct. There can be absolutely no doubt that his assailant was covered in blood. And we would like to appeal to anyone who has had a relative, a friend, anyone they know on bonfire night come home with blood on their clothing.
With perhaps an excuse that they were helping someone else who got injured on Guy Fawkes Night by a bonfire or firework or something like that. But I gather the assailant also cut themselves.
The forensic scientists have told us that there are 2 types of blood in that taxi. So undoubtedly this person has cut himself.
OK, now the man we saw walking back towards Folkestone on the verge of the M20, you feel pretty confident that he was involved in this crime?
Logic would dictate that he was involved in this offence. It is possible that he wished to disassociate himself, that he went along maybe for the theft, maybe in order to run away from the taxi without paying the fare. And when they had eventually to dump the body, he's decided he doesn't want to have anything more to do with it, and he's walked off rather than stay in the taxi. OK, well, if that guy wants to ring in, he might do himself a favour if he wants to dissociate himself from the murder. Since we filmed the reconstruction, I gather you've got evidence there was a white van seen behind the cab, parked on the hard shoulder of the M20. That's correct. A white van was parked very close behind it, a matter of feet. Where the taxi had its indicator lights all flashing, all 4, and this van was directly behind it.
Now, it could have been involved in a sort of conspiracy to get rid of the body. It could have just been a passerby who stopped seeing what he thought was a car in trouble with its warning hazard lights on, presumably. So again, he wants to come forward.
Obviously, we would like him to come forward.
About 11 o'clock, November the 5th, 10, 11 o'clock sometime in the evening.
About 10:30.
Now, when we saw the car go past Horn Street, the cab, and Horn Street, I should say, is the street where the Fountain Pub is, it seemed to overshoot it and then move back again. Somebody who saw that got a very good look at the driver, and you've got an artist's impression.
That is correct. In fact, it was a witness who saw the taxi entering the area as he left it. We have got a good artist's impression. The witness himself is pleased with this impression, and we would ask for anyone who knows a person who looks like this to contact us. OK, a lot of clues there. This was a murder, it seems, with a theft of 50 or 60 quid. If you've any information you think might help, here's the number 01811 8055, or Folkestone Police Station. You can call that on 0303 850055. That's 0303 for Folkestone, 850055. The events took place in North London and in Essex, and you'll see there are several people who have to be eliminated from the inquiry. The victim was Lee Parsons. Lee Parsons was 43 and lived in Friern Barnet. Her pride and joy was her white Golf GTI convertible. Lee worked 3 shifts a week as a masseuse at the New Experience sauna in Eversholt Street in Camden Town. She'd worked here for 12 years, though all her colleagues knew her as Debbie. It's Saturday the 23rd of June. Around lunchtime, Lee went out with her boyfriend, Ozzy, whom she'd been seeing for 2 years.
There you go, horoscopes. Here. The new moon is influencing all forms of communication and travel plans.
Lee had lent Ozzy some money to start Leo's restaurant in Harlow, Essex, about half an hour's drive from Friern Barnet. Tonight, Ozzy was expecting a big party, and Lee had promised to help out.
Whoa, what a pong in here. It's so dark. I'm going to put a bit of light in the place. I can never get this thing working.
Here are the tablecloths, Lee.
Oh, thanks, babe.
About 10 miles away towards London, near Epping Forest, a woman was driving to the shops.
I slowly went down my lane, and I noticed 2 cars with 2 fellows. And it's usually an area where people might stop to walk dogs or have something to, have their lunch. But I noticed there was nothing of that going on.
Oh, doesn't that look lovely? Right, must get going, darling.
Can't you wait? My brother's coming in half an hour.
No, darling, I've got to get to the garden centre on the way home. Ooh, it's still beautiful out here, huh?
Okay, well, we get back as soon as you can. You've got to do the bath now, all right?
I do. Bye, darling.
About an hour and a half later, back at Free and Barnet, a neighbour thought Lee had a visitor.
I saw this black car drive in with a black man driving it. It struck me as being a bit odd because it didn't look like a minicab to me because it was too lovely a car. I saw her car was there, so I thought, well, it's not for Lee. But he stopped in front of her window and gave a nod and then quickly drove out.
Police need to eliminate this driver. The car had a distinctive V-shaped aerial.
Hello.
Lee, it's me. How's things?
Oh, great. I got some gorgeous flowers from the garden centre. Listen, babes, I'm just getting ready to go out, so what time does this do start?
Around 7:30.
Don't you mean 8 to 8:30?
Just get here as soon as you can.
About the same time, the witness in Epping Forest returned home from her shopping.
When I came back and I turned into my road, I saw the two men still there, and that made me a little suspicious. And when I went home, I mentioned to my husband that it was odd to see two people standing there for 5 hours.
About an hour later, a neighbour saw Lee drive out. She was away for half an hour, but police don't know where she went.
How's it going, Kerry?
Busy.
God, I knew she'd be late. Where the hell is she? Lee, what are you doing? The party's started. When are you going to leave? People have already arrived. Are you all right? You sound like you've been sleeping.
I'm all right. I've got something to tell you, baby. I can't tell you now. I'll tell you when I get there.
All right, baby. What is it? Good or bad?
At least tell me that.
It's good.
Well, hurry up and come.
This is Bielek making one for the Czechs, fouled by Marchena.
I was watching the World Cup on the television when I hear a yell. I turn the volume down and I hear a loud argument going on next door and a man is shouting at Lee. I became concerned, so I went outside to where my car was and I looked into Lee's kitchen window. I could see the light on, but I couldn't see or hear anything. I came back in and the next thing I heard was the door bang. I went to my kitchen window and I saw Lee getting into her car unaided on the passenger side, while at the same time a man got into the driving position. I caught a glimpse of him and I think he had fairish hair.
Hello, this is Lee here. Please leave your message. I will be in touch. Bye for now.
Next morning, Lee's convertible was seen in Epping Forest, near where the two suspicious cars had been noticed the previous afternoon. Then, at lunchtime, a rambler peered inside the GTI and saw a body. Lee had 3 wounds in her head, perhaps made by bolts fired from a crossbow. Doug Harvey, why are you convinced this was a calculated, a planned killing?
apart from a general feeling of the whole job, the fact she was lured from her house to a very isolated spot in the forest, and probably more important, the weapon. A powerful crossbow is hardly the sort of weapon you might just happen to have with you.
So you'd really like to hear from anybody who knows any East London or Essex villain who's been toying around with a crossbow, apart from anything else.
It's such an unusual weapon that sort of information might be vital, yes.
Now, also, you need to know anybody who knew Lee, or knew her as Debbie, perhaps. Anyone at all.
Yeah, this is an execution by any other name, and I'm not happy yet that I've found a motive that would fit such a grave crime, so I would urge anyone who hasn't yet contacted us to come forward, please.
Yeah, we've got some home video which shows Lee at a party, dressed as a... There she is there. You'll see that she's dressed as a belly dancer here as well. There she is. If you knew her, please give us a call. Now, the next thing we need to know are those, perhaps to eliminate, those two guys seen in the two cars by the witness in Epping Forest. There might have been nothing to do with this killing, of course.
No, quite right, but I do need to see them or find someone else who saw them. The white man with the red car, all I can tell you about him, unfortunately, is he was wearing black tracksuit trousers with a red stripe down the seam. The driver of the green car, the black man, he's about mid-30s, 6 foot, slim build. He's got a moustache, neatly cut hair, probably gelled back, light brown skin, and he was wearing a long-sleeved yellow sweatshirt. OK, this is Saturday the 23rd of June, and they were there, we think, from about 1:30 until about 6:30, maybe even later. At least 6 o'clock, maybe even later. OK, fine. Well, if that was you, please give us a call. If you know who it was or know anything about this, here's the number. Please notice it's a new one, and incidentally not the number in Radio Times, 081 811 8181. And here's a number for deaf viewers who have a Minicom super telephone. And if you prefer, you can ring the incident room in Edmonton. That's on 081 807 9332. That's 081 807 9332.
33-year-old man from Hounslow in Middlesex who was found murdered 2 months ago. On the night he died, Wednesday the 22nd of August, Paul Stevens did much as he did most evenings. He dropped into a couple of local pubs and chatted to acquaintances and some fellow customers. Some of the people who saw Paul that night have taken part in our film in the hope of finding his killer. His only real friend was Sylvie Robinson, who was a kind of mother figure to him.
I met Paul in the local pub in Feltham 2 weeks after me arriving from Bournemouth. A very nice gentleman to meet. Knew my son, he said. Just got talking about everything, general, saying that he was gay, and I got on very well with him. He had nowhere to stay, as far as I was concerned, so I said he could come round and visit me if he was really stuck. And from then on, I got to know Paul quite well. It seemed as though no one seemed to get on well with him. A very lonely man, but I always got on all right.
Paul? Paul, it's 10:30. Come on, time to get up. Shape up. Come on. You hear me? Are you awake?
I'm awake. I'm gonna sleep with you. All that noise.
Come on, shape up.
I'm awake. I don't know, I feel rough, Sylv.
You shouldn't stay out, should you? I'm gonna put the kettle on and make some tea.
Stop shouting.
Well, come on then.
I'll make the tea if you give us a minute, all right?
Come on then.
Well, give us a minute. Just a minute.
Paul treated me more or less like a mother, more than anything else.
Tea's up, Sylv.
He was a gentleman in a gentlemanly manner.
I'll grab my tea and then I'm gonna go straight out.
He treated me well, always used to take me out and buy things for me and drinks and just take me everywhere he wanted to go.
I'm going for this job.
Oh, yes.
I told you about.
Oh, yeah. Where's it to?
Well, I don't know where it is yet. He hasn't said. It's bar work.
Oh, it is bar work.
Being a barman again.
Think you'll be all right with this job, then?
Yeah, if it works out.
Because you've been waiting long enough, haven't you?
Yeah, I know.
I think you'll be all right, though. Get a start somewhere.
20p there, thank you very much indeed. Yes, sir, what can I do? Pint of Chiswick, please. Pint of Chiswick, yes, sir.
Paul did enjoy bar work because he was meeting people all the time, and it was good for Paul. He never really slacked on his job at all.
Yeah, lazing about the weekends, is that it?
He really had no family to care about him, So he used to just stay here, thinking he was more
Come in, darling.
at home here than
dinner.
in his own brother's place.
Come on, then. Come on. There we go. Come on. Hey, my friend, ain't you? My little friend.
Never seemed to be able to mix with people very well. And he looked to me as though he was just a lonely person. On the Wednesday morning, Paul left the flat at 10:30 to go and see somebody about getting a job. He said he would see me later. A friend of mine from Bournemouth arrived, Michael Reid. We went to the Chariot and Paul was in the Chariot in Elsenham.
Mike, yeah, I'm all right.
How's the job doing?
Well, he hasn't turned up yet, has he?
Really? Still waiting?
Oh, dear. He should. He said he was going to meet me here, but he hasn't been there.
No? No. Can I help you then? Yes. Do you want drinks, Zoe?
Yes, please. 10 extra, please.
Pint and half, 10 extra, please. Sure. You?
Not going to buy me one, then?
Oh, yeah, Paul. Now you got a pint there.
Yeah.
Very late,
How's it going then with the job then?
Ah, someone will turn up. I mean, if this doesn't happen, I mean, someone else will, you know. You know me, I'll work. Anyway, look, I've got to get going, because I don't want to miss him just in case he does turn up. Right, I'll see you around,
Yeah,
Marge.
OK, Paul. All the best, mate.
Can you leave the door and the latch for me, love?
It's not like you, Paul. I thought it was very strange that Paul should ask me to leave the door, because he always used to knock, no matter what hours of the night or early hours of the morning. I would still let him in anyway.
I came into the bar. It's about 6:45 as usual to start work. Paul was waiting at the bar to be served with a pint of Carlsberg. I served him his drink, had a quick hello, how are you with him. He seemed fine, quite happy. I didn't hold a full conversation with him. It was later on the same evening that I realised he'd been joined by 3 gentlemen. In particular, he was holding a conversation with one of these 3. As the evening went on, this particular gentleman bought him drinks once or twice. He seems to be having a good conversation with him, getting on with him quite well. That was about it. I don't know whether they left together, but they had left the pub before the last spell had gone.
It's like anything else, you know. You do lots of things. You drink, you smoke, you know.
It was the night of my 18th birthday, and I just got some presents from my friend, and I wanted to go and show John downstairs in the lower bar. And we were interrupted by Paul, who was sitting on a stool next to us. And then we were interrupted again by someone who he introduced as his brother. And after that, I felt a bit uncomfortable and said that I'd go and speak to my other friends and that I'd probably see him later.
Yeah, well, I do. I'll keep you few friends on your game.
Thanks a lot.
I'll keep you all night, do I? Yeah, see you around.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, hey, Paul, can I help you, mate?
2 pints of lager, please.
John the barman is the last person known to have seen Paul Stevens alive. He served him the 2 pints at about 10 o'clock, which he remembers particularly because Paul normally drank half pints. John didn't see who the second pint was for. No one knows exactly what Paul did after that, or whether he was alone. It is known that he somehow got to Southall 3 miles away. He may have taken a bus there, he may have walked. He may have taken a cab, or been given a lift by someone. Anyone who saw Paul on the night of Wednesday the 22nd of August, or in the small hours of Thursday the 23rd, could perhaps provide the vital clue to leading police to find whoever killed him.
I left my house around about 5:30, and I was already late for work. So I thought to myself, instead of stopping and getting a newspaper like I normally do, I'll take the canal route to get to work early. So as I was coming through the canal, I was cycling like I normally would. I come up to where a bridge was, and I see a what looked like a great big patch of red blotches. I thought nothing of it first, but then I got off my bike and I had a look. And when I had a look, it looked like blood. So then when I looked a bit further, I found some more. Then I looked into the water and I found what appeared to be a body. So from that point, I didn't know what to do, to be quite honest. I just took another glance. I got back on my bike and I rode off down the road. I just thought to myself, you know, it couldn't happen to me. You know, I couldn't find something like that. It was dreadful.
Well, the young man then went to the police and reported what he'd seen. DCI Jim Brann is in charge of the inquiry. So Paul Stevens was a man with many acquaintances, but few friends, if any.
Yes, that's right, sir. He's been described, I mean, the way the actor portrayed him there was excellent. He's been described as being very effeminate in his manners and speech, and that's the way I think he came across there.
Right, now let's look first at the men we know Paul met that evening. First of all, did he eventually meet up with a man who he thought was going to offer him a job?
He did meet that man, but that man actually had merely made that offer to him to wind him up. He had no intention of giving him a job at all and told him that night that there was no job at all.
Right. Now, secondly, the descriptions we have of the two men he met. First of all, there was the man in the group of three that he was chatting to in the Tankerville pub.
That's right. He's the one that we see buying the drinks over the counter. He's a bit older than Paul. He's 38 to 40. He's about 5'9". He's white, as you can see. He's a medium build, and his hair, although it doesn't come across there very well, is described as being short, receding and dark. He's got very piercing blue hazel eyes, and he was unshaven, as you can see there.
Right. And secondly, we have a video fit of the man he met later on in the evening, the man in the Chariot pub, who he introduced to somebody as his brother.
Yes, that's not an unusual trait in Paul. He used to introduce all sorts of people as his brother. He's younger than Paul, 19 to 21. He's about 6 foot tall, slim build, fair blonde hair, as shown there, swept back. He's got white T-shirt, jeans and black Adidas trainers on.
Could that have been the man he bought the pint for? It was only about an hour later, if that.
That's right. There's a possibility that we can't discount, but we haven't been able to find this person.
And your main mystery, of course, is where Paul went after 10 o'clock, after he'd left the Chariot that night.
Yes, our missing 8 hours. From the time he left, 10 o'clock or thereabouts, until he was found at 6, we have no idea where he went, who he was with, or what he was doing. And we appeal to anyone who saw him then to come forward and let us know.
That was Wednesday the 22nd of August, or the small hours of Thursday the 23rd of August. Now, Paul rarely went to the Southall area, as far as we know. He lived 3 miles away from there, but there was a sighting of him, apparently, near the spot where his body was found, about 3 weeks beforehand.
Yes, during the course of our inquiry, we found one witness who says he saw Paul sat in the garden of a pub down by the canal about 3 weeks before his body was found, and we'd like to know if anybody else saw Paul in or around Southall prior to his death.
When his body was found, there was £20 in his pocket, so robbery wasn't the motive. Do you have any indications of what his motive might be?
Well, we know that Paul had sexual contact with a man or men the night before he died. We obviously would like to speak to anyone who did have any form of sexual contact with Paul, and I would ask for them to come forward. I can appreciate that gay people will not be happy about contacting the police and admitting to any sort of contact with Paul. But I can give you a categoric reassurance now that we have no interest other than to solve this murder. We don't intend to prosecute people for any offences we discover along the way. Our sole interest is in solving the murder.
Mr. Bland, thank you very much indeed. If you can offer any information on this, please ring. We incidentally also have a voluntary worker here acting on behalf of the gay community. There are BBC researchers here too who you can ask to speak to if you prefer. Here's the number direct to the studio, 081 811 8181, or you can ring Jim Bland's colleagues at the incident room. The number there is 071 937 0299. That's 071 937 0299.
Or so, they set up a systematic and vigorous review procedure, and it's been pretty successful. So think back to 1990. There was the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, which triggered the Gulf War. And in July came one of the most dramatic moments in England's World Cup hopes when Chris Waddle missed a penalty shootout. What else happened in 1990? Well, Paul Stevens went for a drink in the Tankerville in Hounslow in West London. And for 12 years since, detectives have been trying to piece together what happened after that.
I came into the bar at about 6:45 as usual to start work. Paul was waiting at the bar to be served with a pint of Carlsberg. I served him his drink, had a quick hello, how are you with him. He seemed fine, quite happy. It was later on the same evening that I realised he'd been joined by 3 gentlemen. In particular, he was holding a conversation with one of these 3. As the evening went on, this particular gentleman bought him drinks once or twice. He seems to be having a good conversation with him, getting on with him quite well. That was about it.
We need to trace these men, only for elimination. Were you there? Paul then moved across the road to the Chariot, where this girl celebrating her 18th birthday remembers he congratulated her.
I heard them all singing happy birthday to you last night.
That was really embarrassing.
You've met my brother, have you?
No, pleased to meet you.
We know it wasn't his brother. It's another man police now need to eliminate. He's 6 foot, blonde and slim.
Thanks a lot. See you then.
Your night, do I? Yeah, see you around.
Bye.
Bye.
Sometime late that Wednesday evening, Paul went from Hounslow to Southall. We don't know why. What we do know is that next day he was found dead with head wounds. He'd been thrown into the Grand Union Canal.
Brian, why was Paul anywhere near that canal in Southall? It's quite a long way from where he was drinking.
It's about 3 miles walking. It remains a mystery, to be honest.
It's a very lonely spot.
It is. It's a desolate spot, and why he actually went there, we don't know. What we do know is that Paul was an openly gay man who had a sexual connection in the hours before his death. Now, whether that was connected with his death, we don't know, or whether it was a homophobic attack, we don't know that. We know that times have changed, and it may be whoever Paul was with on that night may have felt uncomfortable about coming forward. But times have changed, and it may be that he feels more comfortable in telling us why he was there with Paul that night.
A lot more emancipated attitudes now.
That's right, that's correct.
Whoever did kill Paul might well have bragged about it, of course, in the years since then, or confided in somebody else.
Well, I think that would have been the case, and I would urge anybody out there who knows, who has heard, who is responsible, to come forward, to examine their conscience and come forward and tell us who was responsible.
Is there anyone specific you're trying to trace?
Well, in addition to the people that have already been mentioned in the pubs, 3 people. One by the name of Martin, a man who we know used to drink in the Tankerville pub. He is of similar description to the man that Paul introduced as his brother.
That's about 6 foot tall, blonde hair?
6 foot tall, blonde hair, is athletic build, maybe Australian, maybe a New Zealander. And 2 people who we did speak to at the time, 2 local women. One, Elizabeth, who would now be aged about 35. She was an occupational therapist. And Julie, who was a barmaid in the Hussar Public House. We need to talk to those women.
Paul had several brothers, quite a close family, actually. Fred, one of his brothers, is here. Just tell us a little bit about him and the family.
Well, Paul was the youngest of 6 boys. He was 4 when his father died, and he was 13 when Mum died. And we were actually a close-knit unit in the family home until I actually left when I was about 19. We all went our separate ways. We didn't really know much about the gay community scene until actually his funeral, when we put an advert in and a lot of people turned up, all from the gay community. So I had a lot of friends in the gay community.
Well, let's hope some of those friends will call in tonight. Anybody knows anything about this? There's a £10,000 reward. Please, let's resolve this case tonight. 0500 600 600. The Gay London Policing Group offer assistance to gay people in dealing with the police. If you'd prefer to talk to them, by all means, call them on 020 7704 2040.
Tonight's first case is strangely unsettling. It's like a killing from some second-rate Hollywood screenplay. And indeed, there is an American feature to the crime. Killers cruising round in what looked like a white Cadillac and shooting someone in cold blood. But in contrast to murders in the movies, the victim, Alan Lepard, had no criminal connections and no known enemies. And the setting was an English hamlet just a few yards up from the village pub. Alan's girlfriend, Brenda, has helped us to make this film, and you'll see her in an interview, though an actress takes her part in the reconstruction. It's 3 weeks before Easter at the pub in Monkton, not far from Ramsgate in Kent.
It was 6:15 approximately in the evening. I was just opening the pub. This gentleman walked in, attracted my attention.
Is Mr. Leppard in here?
Who? Somebody told me he drank in here.
He had a gold bracelet on one wrist. There was a gold watch on the other wrist. Quite smartly dressed with a red tie on. Black swept-back hair, quite piercing eyes, square jaw, and lines sunk back from the nose into his face, around the mouth.
In fact, Alan Lepard lived 2 doors down from the pub. He'd moved to Monkton 4 months earlier with his girlfriend Brenda, and the couple were planning to get married. She'd been divorced for several years, but Alan was waiting for his divorce to be completed.
I spent so long, and I think he did, trying to find the right person, and we felt we'd found it. Alan was a very kind man. He was very gentle. He wasn't romantic in the sense that he'd bring flowers, but he never hid his feelings.
Well, I've finished that digging. Do you fancy going down the pub later? Just for a quick drink?
I suppose we could, if you want to.
You're not very keen, are you? We don't have to go, you know.
It's just that it's so nice being on our own. Let's just stay in.
OK.
I was sitting in my lounge. It was about 8:30 with my mother. We were watching television. All of a sudden I heard a scuffle outside. I looked out the window and I saw some boys. They were arguing. Soon after that I noticed a big American car cruising up the road at very slow speed. But then it continued to go up and down the road, on and off for about the next couple of hours.
I was watching television. Alan had dropped off to sleep.
Alan, I think there's someone at the door. Well, shall I go and see who it is?
Yeah.
It was by our bedroom clock, just after 10 o'clock, but it was a bit fast. And I went to the bedroom window and I saw 2 people at the side of this large white car. And I turned the landing light on to go down to see who it was.
Don't know who it was, but they've gone. Still, if it's important, they'll come back later.
Around the same time, and just a few yards down the road, 2 holidaymakers from a nearby caravan park got a good view of the white car's driver. "20 minutes later, another witness saw the car still there.
Well, it was about 20 past 10. I was leaving my girlfriend's house, and there's a big white American car parked where I normally park my car. This man walked past the pub and got into the left-hand side, so I presume it's a left-hand drive car, and just drove off.
Then, for 25 minutes, the big car disappeared.
Sorry, but my mind's made up. I'm going back to London tonight.
I think about 22, quarter to 11. Somebody knocked at the door again.
You go this time.
And I went to the window again, and I said, it's the same people. And we both went downstairs.
Who is it? What do you want? Who is it?
He went out the door.
What the hell's all this about?
Then an almighty bang. And a scream. I went to go outside, and I got to the corner of the back of the cottage, and Alan came round the corner, and as he came towards me, he must have moved his hands because I was absolutely covered in blood. And I started screaming. I think he said, "Get in." I think because he was worried for me. He was just a grey colour. And he was just going, and there was nothing I could do to stop him.
Nick Biddis, what was the motive? Why would somebody want to kill him?
We have a number of ideas about the motive, but there's nothing that we can really pin down at this stage.
But as far as you're concerned, he was a completely innocent victim.
That is correct. He's a completely innocent victim of a terrible crime.
I mean, it looks to some extent as though there might have been sort of professional killers hired, but I mean, they seem to be rather amateur professionals.
Well, they certainly do, yes.
And the Cadillac, or whatever it was that drew a lot of attention to them, was it a Cadillac? You're not exactly sure what it was.
We're not sure of the maker or model of the car. All I can say is a light-coloured, possibly white, large American-style saloon motor car.
So presumably you'd like to know anybody who had one of those white cars up to Easter.
We certainly
hasn't
would.
been driving it since.
That's right, and where it could be now, perhaps scrap dealers or some scrapyard may have it, but anybody who's seen a car up until Easter and it's now disappeared, we'd like to hear from.
Not entirely sure whether there were 2 or 3 occupants. At one stage there seemed to be only 1, but we've got a fairly good description of the white-haired or light-haired driver who was seen by the 2 people coming from the caravan
Yes, indeed
park.
we have. We have a man there who's believed in his late 40s, possibly about 5'7", sitting in the car, and the e-fit you've got.
And what about the guy who came into the White Stag pub a couple of weeks before the killing? I mean, presumably you need to eliminate this chap who might be perfectly innocent of the whole affair.
We would like to trace this man. He is a man who went into the pub about 3 weeks before, described as being 35 to 38 years of age, wearing a gold bracelet and gold watch. We'd very much like to trace that man and speak with him.
There's something else you need to eliminate, I know, because another white American car was seen not far away that same night.
There was about 11:10 on the same evening in the village of Minster, which is next door to Monkton. There was a similar car seen with 2 men getting into it in the New Inn car park, which is a pub in the centre of the village, and we'd very much like to trace those 2 men to see whether or not they can assist with this inquiry.
OK, I mean, you're almost certain this car had nothing to do with it and it needs to be eliminated.
We think we can eliminate that, but we'd like to hear from the people who were with it.
I'd mentioned the caravan park, the Fox Hunter Caravan Park. About 300 caravans, I think, were parked there. This is the Easter weekend, of course. Now, you've spoken to most people who were there that weekend, but I gather not everyone.
That's right. There are over 300 caravans on this site, and it was a very busy Easter weekend, quite nice weather, and we'd like to hear from anybody who so far we have not seen or hasn't spoken to us that may have been down during that weekend.
Can you promise them discretion?
Everything they give us will be treated in the strictest of confidence.
OK, there's a reward. I doubt that would be anybody's prime motive in this, but the family have put up a reward of £5,000. Here's the number if you can help. 081 811 8181. That's 081 811 8181. Or you can call the Murder Inquiry Room at Margate Police Station on 0843 22 5566. That's 0843, the code for Thanet, 22 5566.
Our last reconstruction tonight is a particularly sad case. 32-year-old Glenda Potter was a lonely woman who'd been divorced, separated from her children, and had finally turned to drink, drugs and prostitution. She just managed to get by on money she earned on the streets of Rochester and Chatham in Kent. On Tuesday the 14th of May, she was found murdered. And our reconstruction begins on the morning of that day in Rochester in Kent. Here, behind the Vines United Reformed Church, is a regular meeting place for local schoolboys. At 8:20, just before school started, 3 boys were smoking very near the spot where Glenda's body was to be found 4 hours later. A gardener started working in the grounds nearby at 9:30 and saw nothing suspicious all morning. So police believe it was in that hour between 8:30 and 9:30, before the gardener arrived, that Glenda's body was dumped. Glenda was well known in Chatham, where she'd lived all her life. For the past few months, she'd lived in part of the town known locally as Bedsit Land. On Friday the 10th of May, a friend called round.
So normal. Please welcome James Herbert.
So look, you got any plans for the weekend?
What do you think? Of course not. Want a cup of tea?
No, thanks. Look, I'm going down to Cornwall for the weekend.
Cornwall? Lucky you.
Would you want to come?
Well, have you booked in a hotel or something?
No, I'm taking a tent and going camping.
But Glenda didn't go away for the weekend, and that night she was seen in one of her regular haunts, the King's Arms in Rochester.
I was in here having a drink with my brother George, and Glenda came in.
Hi, friend girl. Can I catch a drink off you? Just half a lager.
Oh, Glenda, you get on my bloody nerves. You're always on the ponds. Honest to God.
I'll have some money tomorrow. Hi, girl. Go on, love.
Oh, put that away, for God's sake. JJ, can she have half a lager, please? Make sure when you have this that you behave yourself, otherwise they'll throw you out.
Cheers,
All
friend.
right.
I'm a good girl now.
All right. She was a bit of a loner, Glenda. She didn't make friends easily, but I think she didn't want to anywhere. She liked to be by herself. She could be a little bit of a pest when she was in the pub, but that was just Glenda. She was a sad person, and all the time she was chatting to us, there was this guy stood over in the corner, and he seemed to be paying a lot of attention to Glenda. I did notice he was left-handed, and he had a wedding ring on.
Yeah, well, I'm off then. See you, George. See you, friend girl.
This guy left at the same time as what she did, which just seemed a bit odd to me.
During the rest of that weekend, Glenda was seen soliciting in her usual places along Rochester High Street. On Saturday night, a taxi driver saw her at the railway station.
I was parked in Broadstairs Station forecourt, and I saw Glenda standing on the corner when I noticed a car turned behind me, drove back out towards the High Street and stopped opposite where Glenda was standing. By that time, my passenger was on board, and I followed the car up the road and had to stop virtually beside him to drive round him. I looked into the car and saw the driver virtually full face.
The description of the driver is very similar to the grey-haired man in the pub the night before. Then, just after 10 o'clock, Glenda was back on the streets again on the corner of Rochester High Street and Gundolph Road outside St Bartholomew's Chapel.
Glenda?
During the weekend, several neighbours called at Glenda's bedsit because the television had been on continuously. There was no answer. So who did she spend those nights with? Sunday, the 12th of May.
Hi, Glenda.
Hi.
Haven't seen you lately.
Oh, well, been busy, you know. Anyway, when are you going to come round and see me?
Oh, when I got the time.
OK, well, call round any time. I've got to go now. See ya.
This was the last time Glenda was seen alive. Again, that Sunday night, she didn't return to her bedsit. But by now, police believe Glenda was dead. 2 days after that, a church helper found Glenda's body in the grounds of the United Reformed Church. Well, Mr. Ayling, there are several mysteries in this case. The first one, working backwards, is how Glenda's body came to be in the churchyard. Why are you so sure that it was put there sometime between 8:30 and 9:30 on that Tuesday, the 14th of May?
Well, the three schoolboys left their smoking corner at about 8:30. They didn't see Glenda's body. At 9:30, a gardener started work. So that leaves the 1 hour when we believe that Glenda's body may have been taken there. However, the schoolboys may have been mistaken, in which case Glenda's body could have been put there much earlier.
So you have to keep something of an open mind on that.
Yes.
The next mystery concerns two incidents in the area of that churchyard on the day before Glenda's body was found. That's Monday the 13th of May. What was the first incident?
Yes, at about 4:15 p.m, a schoolboy went to the rear of the church. He was looking for his friends. He didn't see them, but he did see a person's leg.
So that's somebody just sitting in the recess there?
Yes, apparently so. He describes the leg to us as having a white training shoe with a black pattern on it, and also a white sock with a coloured band at the top of it. We don't believe this was Glenda's leg, as she was wearing white socks with black ankle boots.
So you're sure that that wasn't Glenda sitting there? The second incident was about 2 hours after that, and that was in the car park adjoining the church.
Yes, here, a man returning to his home after a day out saw two people at about 6:30 p.m. It was a man and a woman. They were stood each side of a wall. The man is described as having sandy hair, the woman short with dark hair. We would like to know who those people were so that we can eliminate them from our inquiry.
Right. The other person it's very important for you to eliminate from your inquiry is the grey-haired man who was seen with Glenda on the Friday night. Well, he wasn't with her, but he was seen with her in the pub on the Friday night, and then with her perhaps on later.
Yes, he's described as being aged about 60 years, 6 feet tall, having grey hair and balding. He was described as smart appearance, wearing a jacket, a collar and a tie. Again, we would like to trace this man, to eliminate him from our inquiries. We can assure him and any other person absolute confidence if they do contact us.
Because he was probably seen with her by a taxi driver on Saturday night, or certainly at Rochester railway station.
Yes, he was seen at Rochester railway station by the taxi driver on either Friday or the Saturday night. We can't be sure which it was. He was driving a red estate car, G or H registered. It could have been a Volvo.
The final mystery is why Glenda would have her television and lights on all over the weekend and yet go away for the nights.
Yes, we don't believe that she went home Friday or Saturday night. We would very much like to know where she was on those 2 nights.
Have you any idea why Glenda was killed?
Well, we don't believe that robbery was a motive. Glenda was a prostitute, and of course that made her vulnerable. She was also a drug abuser. That too made her vulnerable. Beyond that, we don't know why Glenda was killed.
Well, Mr. Ayling, thank you very much. I'll just emphasise that we and Mr. Ayling's colleagues can promise you absolute discretion if you can help with any information about where or how Glenda spent that last weekend of her life. Remember, she was last seen on Sunday, the 12th of May. You can ring us here in the studio on 081 811 8181, or the number to the incident room in Rochester is 0634 830 205. That's 0634 830 205.
Crimewatch doesn't make appeals for missing persons. If someone chooses to make off without telling family or friends, well, you know, maybe reckless, selfish, thoughtless of the worry that they'll have caused, but it's not a crime. Tonight, though, I'm asking one person, please call home. Dina McNichol, if you're watching, will you call your father, your grandma, or Sarah? All of them are waiting by the phone right now. All they want to hear is that you're alive and well. The fact is that Sergeant Derek Nichol here fears that Dinah has been abducted and may be dead. Dinah's family and friends and one of her teachers have taken part in our reconstruction of the days that led up to her disappearance. None of them has seen her since she went to a rock festival last August. And with the festival season due to start again soon, this appeal is aimed especially at anyone who saw Dinah last year.
So how's everything going then? It's going really great, actually. I'm getting on really well with Dad, which is great.
Before she vanished, Dinah was in good spirits. She'd finished her A-levels and had told her father she'd spend the summer unwinding, maybe travelling.
In 1980, her mother was killed in a traffic accident. She was forced to grow up rather quickly.
Maybe go to India or somewhere.
She did admire what her sister had done, and her elder sister, and she wanted to do similar sort of thing, like do all her studies, get her A-levels, and go to college or university.
Dinah had been quiet but self-composed at school and was expected to do well, especially by her history teacher, Paul Luxmore.
So Henry VII, her background and difficulties in childhood, I think gave her a greater experience than other pupils had, and she was therefore often the person who other pupils turned to for help.
This is a rock festival at Deptford in southeast London on the 27th of July. This film was taken by one of Dinah's friends. Next day, Dinah hitched home and not far from her old school, was spotted by her former teacher.
I was driving through East Essex on Sunday afternoon and saw Dinah walking on the side of the road. She was instantly recognisable as Dinah because of her hair and the clothes that she was wearing, so I pulled in and offered her a lift. I knew that she often hitchhiked and she was quite a long way from home, so it seemed to make sense to offer her a lift back. During the course of the conversation, I told Dinah that the following weekend I'd be going down to Chichester. She asked me if she could have a lift down. She was going to a festival in Liphook in Hampshire, which was nearby. I agreed to do that because otherwise I knew that she would be hitchhiking down.
On her 18th birthday, Dinah became entitled to £2,000. It was compensation for her mother's death. Dinah put it in a building society and then resisted all temptation to draw on it.
Why don't you take some money out of your account? No, I don't want to touch that money. I want to save that for university because I'm going to need that. Yeah. We'd spent a week at my nan's, Shona, Dinah and myself, and we'd had a good week doing things like playing crazy golf and going swimming and shopping. I dropped her off at High Barnet Tube Station after lunch on Friday. Oh, thanks for the lift. It's okay. And take care, all right? Yeah, you. Oh. I'll see you soon. Yeah, see you, dude. And as I watched her go, I felt very protective and a strong feeling of love for her. And I thought about getting out the car to give her a hug goodbye, but I didn't. And that was the last time that I saw her.
Next day, as arranged, Paul Luxmore dropped Dinah off near the festival at Liphook in Hampshire, where she'd planned to meet with friends.
Oh, thanks for the lift.
You're welcome. See ya.
Cheers.
Take care.
I will.
Dinah seemed to be perfectly happy and relaxed that day. There's nothing unusual about her. She seemed to be pleased to have been over with her exams and with her life ahead of her. She certainly wasn't the sort of person who'd be taken in by anybody. She wasn't gullible at all, and seemed to give me the impression that after going to the festival she'd be going straight home afterwards.
Dinah spent that evening chatting and listening to the music. Next day, Sunday the 4th of August, the Torpedo Festival, as it was called, wound down.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't think I'm going to come back with you. I might hitch down to Portsmouth. Why Portsmouth? Well, why not really? It's not that far away and I've never been. I'm going to leave my stuff here and I'm going to go off for a while. I'll see you back a bit later.
All right. Later. It was about 2.5 hours later when Dinah returned from her walk.
Look, I'm sorry I've been so long, but as I said before, I'm going to hang around here as long as possible, and then I'm going to hitch down to Portsmouth. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks or so.
Dinah did introduce us to the man that she was with, but I can't remember his name. She did say that she just met him. He was in his mid-20s, about 5'9" tall, of medium build, casually dressed with wavy dark hair.
Next morning, in nearby Greyshot, a villager remembers a couple who were walking down the high street. The woman seemed quite young and short. In fact, Dinah's only 4'10". The man was maybe 10 years older. Dinah's exam results arrived soon after she disappeared. She passed them all. She'd almost certainly get into university.
There's no way she would not let us know that she was okay. And we really fear the worst.
Derek Nichol, so do you, don't you?
Yes, we do. We are treating this really seriously. The search we done earlier this year at Bramshop Common was undertaken by Hampshire Constabulary with over 100 police officers over a 3-day period.
So as far as you're concerned now, this is effectively a murder hunt?
It is. We can't call it a murder hunt at this stage because obviously we haven't found a body, but we are desperately concerned and we do feel that there is a strong possibility that something has happened to her.
Now, one of the clues is that that £2,000 that she got as compensation for her mother's death, that she guarded so carefully, all of that has been withdrawn?
With the exception of about £100 odd, yes, it was withdrawn at 13 locations around the south coast between the 8th and the 25th of August of last year, as wide apart as Ramsgate, Margate, Havant, Brighton.
That's all pretty ominous.
Yes.
The chap she was seen with as she left Ramshot Common on the Sunday, the 4th of August, now, I mean, he's by no means likely to be the murderer. I mean, you just need to get hold of him just to find out where she went next.
Indeed, we would desperately like to talk to that young man. As you say, he may not be involved at all, but he would be the person that can give us a clue as to where she went if she left that festival site.
He's 25 upwards, we think. 5'9", we think. We honestly don't know a great deal more about him.
The only thing that is distinctive about him is that he was casually dressed at what was extensively a hippie festival, and that is the only thing the young girls that was with her can remember particularly.
Just clutching at straws, just assuming that Dinah is still alive and just gone off somewhere. Maybe she's joined some sort of sect or something like that.
We have looked into that. It is a very difficult area to look at, but from the character and everything I know about her and discovered from her friends, she is not the sort of person, they believe anyway, to be taken in by one of these sort of sects.
She wore contact lenses, and actually she was very, very short-sighted, wasn't she?
She was indeed. In fact, to coin a phrase, she needed glasses to find her glasses.
So if any optician has seen her, again, it's a heck of a long shot, but I mean, there were -10 or -11.5.
One was -10 and one was -11.5.
Any other help that anybody can give?
At the moment, we have no idea where she went or what happened to her after her friends left her at Branshot Common.
OK, well, it was Sunday the 4th of August. Very, very hot time last year. If you saw her, please call us. Incidentally, if someone close to you is missing, don't call us. You might like to call the Missing Person Helpline, though, set up by the Susie Lamplugh Trust. There's the number, 081 392 2000, 081 392 2000. Coming back to the Dina McNichol inquiry, the number here in the studio is 081 811 8181. Or if you think you know anything at all, you can try the Instant Room in Chelmsford. That's on 0245 542 120, 0245 452 120. We now move on to another rather grim case that's made national headlines. Another case, I'm afraid, that seems to be a killing for the sake of it. The victim was 16-year-old Claire Tiltman, and she was picked, apparently, at random. Almost everyone you see in what follows, fire and ambulance crews, witnesses and friends, are the real people involved who've helped us to reenact events.
Good run! The second floor! Alphabet!
She was in the fire brigade, the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, and...
She made it quite clear she didn't want a 9-to-5 job. She wanted to go in the fire brigade.
Yeah. That was her intention, to go in the fire brigade. No one would change it, you know. She was a lovely kid, you know. It's just such a shame.
Claire, she was a good student. She always used to come to the sessions. She was always first here. She had an idea that firefighting was probably going to be what she wanted to do. There are other things within the fire brigade, but she really wanted to be out there fighting fires, possibly driving or even take promotion exams. She was very bright and very intelligent, so I would understand that she could very easily take her leading firefighters exam and pass, and possibly be in charge of a fire appliance.
Claire! You're gonna miss that bus! OK, I'll be down in a minute.
It was the final day of Claire's mock GCSE exams. She'd been sitting school tests for a fortnight and was looking forward to an evening without pressure.
Here, drink this. Hey, good luck with that exam. Huh?
All right, Claire, how are you doing? All right. I told you. I've got a job down Pizza Hut.
Oh, great. I was going to pop round later and talk about college and that.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, I'm at typing.
Oh, maybe I won't bother then.
It's only for an hour.
Yeah, all right. I'll come round tonight.
The exams was the last day. She'd done quite well in them, actually, because she wasn't a particular scholar, but she did work hard, and she'd done very well.
How did it go?
Okay, yeah, I did quite well, I think.
I told you, didn't I?
Yeah, good. Oh, yeah, can I pop down and see Vicky later?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, I want to talk to her about college and all that.
Yeah, she's got in.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's really thrilled.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Claire, are you sure you don't want to lift down?
No, it's all right. I wanted to do my hair first anyway.
Bye then.
All right, bye. See ya.
Normally, I would have run her up there, and possibly even Heather bring her back, because his car had been stolen, so he had my car, like, for work.
Claire had a mile to walk to Vicky's home. Were you driving down the A226, here called the London Road, through Greenhithe, Kent, between Dartford and Gravesend? It's 6 o'clock on Monday a month ago, Monday the 18th of January.
I often go jogging along the London Road towards Holmes Cross when I first noticed Claire walking towards me. On my way home along the same London Road, I again noticed Claire in the distance, just walking towards the traffic lights at the Railway Hotel. Just before the traffic lights, she walked out towards the main road, as if she was going to cross, thus causing me to run in the road. The thing that struck me afterwards, that I thought to myself, oh, thank you for letting me run in the road.
It's not clear why Claire went into this alley. Maybe she was forced here. Did you see anyone nearby?
Come down Providence Street, into Station Road, up towards the traffic lights. I see this car is parked in a very stupid place, half on, half off the curb, right on the traffic lights. And then this young girl come charging out this alley. I remember thinking, bloody kids. After hearing on the news about a young girl being killed and everything, I suddenly realised, suddenly dawned on me that that stupid girl who nearly ran on the road last night was Claire Tiltman.
About 30 seconds later, Michael Godfrey was turning onto London Road.
What's that, Ron? Looks like a person.
Yeah, it's probably a pile of rubbish.
No, it's a person. I'm going to stop.
Because she was against a wall, it looked as though it was a hit-and-run car accident. The obvious thing, it's right by a road. Ron, my passenger, went off and got an ambulance. I've used first aid before, but never to that extent. She just didn't respond. And I continued that until the ambulance arrived, and they then took over.
I don't know, I think it's a road accident.
Has she got a pulse or
No.
breathing?
No pulse. I've been giving her CPR. She's not responded, and there's no pulse.
Vicky? Oh, hello. It's Linda here. Can you send Claire home? She's not there. Right. OK, I'll try Lisa. Thanks.
I'm sure that Claire would have sensed that somebody was with her in that last moment. And I think that's quite important for her family to know that she wasn't on her own, and that she was with somebody and that they were caring for her.
I used to play pool, and she took an interest in it. All of a sudden, it seemed overnight, she just clicked.
Because they wanted her to go in the competition on holiday, didn't they?
But she wasn't old enough. Playing pool, she was brilliant. Regularly beat me.
No one likes to think their husband, boyfriend, son, any relative is capable of doing this, but to come forward, because I know that I would have to, because I don't think I could live with myself knowing what that person's done, and maybe he was capable of doing it again.
Oh, and Taylor, that must be your fear. This guy's going to do it again.
Yes, it is. This was a particularly savage attack. Claire was stabbed several times with a large knife, and I think there's every likelihood that this person could strike again.
It's going to be terribly difficult for anybody who knows the offender, particularly if it is his mum or a girlfriend or somebody, to think it really could be him. I mean, what do you think they should look for? Firstly, does he live in the area, do you think?
I think there's, in fact, I'm convinced that the person either lives in the area, has got connections in the area, or has lived in the area in the past. And I'm equally convinced that somebody in that local community knows who this person is or suspects who they are, and I would simply say to that person, can you honestly live with Claire Tiltman's murder on your conscience? And can you live with the thought that this person may well strike again?
Now, you mentioned she'd been stabbed with a very unusually large knife. It's not the sort of knife someone would sort of carry, like a little penknife or anything. Is there a possibility this guy's got an obsession with knives, a fascination with them?
Certainly couldn't rule that out. I mean, it was a large knife, and it's not the sort of thing you would normally carry around, say, for instance, to do like your normal day's work.
And
so it's an unusual weapon.
Given perhaps to unpredictable violence, outbursts of aggression, which perhaps a girlfriend would have noticed.
I think certainly after committing an offence as ferocious as this, his behaviour would have been abnormal, and someone close to him, a girlfriend, wife, mother, would actually notice a difference in the behaviour.
Finally, just very quickly, that car parked so awkwardly at the traffic lights. You've got to find the driver of that, presumably.
Very, very important to the inquiry, a very important witness, and we would like that person to come forward.
OK, well, if that driver was you, or there's any way that you can help, particularly if you just think there is something there that clicked with someone you know, the number here, 081 811 8181. Alternatively, there's a special incident room which has been set up tonight in Maidstone for Crimewatch calls. Take a special note of the number, please, because the line's already busy here, and it may be difficult to get through. The number there is 0622 654 321. Very easy to remember. 0622 is the code for Maidstone, and then 654 321.
Inexplicable murder of an elderly man, Ron Cousins, in Chelmsford. Police have talked to nearly 1,000 people in house-to-house inquiries, another 260 in stop checks in the street, and they've taken nearly 600 statements. Neighbours and acquaintances have been more than willing to help, but all to no avail. This appeal to Crimewatch viewers is frankly their last hope of finding whoever was callous enough to have killed a frail old man. Our reconstruction begins in the house next door to Mr. Cousins in the small hours of the day Ron died. On Saturday, April the 16th, the couple next door to Ron, David and Angela Bailey, left home early in the morning. They were off to France for the weekend.
Oh, it's a funny noise. Can you hear it?
Yeah, it sounds like it's coming from Ron's bathroom.
I thought it's a bit early to wake him up, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, we're running late anyway. Let's go.
Right.
Ron was born in this house, 5 Anchor Street. He'd lived all his life here. Closest to him was his widowed sister, Ruby, who lived nearby.
He loved people. You couldn't forget him. He was kind. That's the impression you get. He was kind. He'd do anything for anybody.
Hello, Ron. How are you, mate? Hello, mate. How are you? Nice to see you again. Nice bit of green. Yeah, not so bad.
The day of Ron's death, Friday, April the 15th, would seem to have started normally enough.
Hello, dear. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
All right. How's hubby?
He's fine.
Good.
You're going to be busy?
Oh, yeah. Look what they gave me down at the anchor.
That is nice,
Brilliant.
yes.
I'm going to get it framed.
Yes.
They look nice hanging up with my front.
Near enough everybody in the market knew him.
Are you?
He was the sort of man that you would like to have for your grandfather, because he was such a nice old boy. He was lonely, you could tell that, but he was nice, and I just got the, you know, sometimes the feeling just came that you wanted to take him home and look after him.
Later, he went to the Christchurch Day Centre, one of several church-run drop-in centres he frequented. He thrived on the company. Anne helps to run the centre.
I was always pleased to see him. He used to love coming for his lunch, and he was a kindly, lovely old man. He never grumbled. He was always happy, had a smile for you. If there was somebody there to listen to him, he would always chat. And he was just glad that he was able to be out and about amongst people.
Julie works as a secretary at an office in Anchor Street.
Won't be a minute, Jo. I'm just going across to the post box. All right, okay.
Late that afternoon, she saw Ron in the street, making his way home.
I'd only gone round the corner a couple of steps, but as I turned, I noticed Ron coming from the direction of the town, from the New London Road end. I always felt I wanted to stop, just to make sure he was okay.
Can't wait for the weather. I mean, if it's raining, I don't mind.
He had such a cheery personality.
Yeah, I know.
He never grumbled about anything. And he always wanted everybody to enjoy life. He never preached about anything. He obviously knew there was nasty people out there. There was bad in the world, but he could never ever see it in anybody.
You're going to make yourself a nice cup of tea.
It's a good idea. We could do with a cuppa now. Right, I'll see you.
And with that, I just told him to look after himself, and then he went down the back alley to the back of his house. And that was, unfortunately, the last I saw of him.
Shortly before 6 o'clock, Peter Morgan left work and headed for his Friday evening workout at the local gym, also in Anchor Street.
I saw a young man standing near the junction. He was about 5 foot 8 inches tall. He was slightly built and had long hair. As I looked at him, he turned away, and I thought he looked a bit suspicious. It was as though he didn't want me to notice him.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Half an hour later, as Joanna Stevenson took her daughter to a German lesson, she saw a man fitting exactly the same description.
There was a man standing outside the terraced houses, right opposite where I turn into the car park. He seemed to be looking up the alleyway between the houses.
See you about 7.
Five minutes later, she remembers the man was still there. He was staring up at number 5 Anchor Street.
This time he was looking up at the bedroom window and then looking down again. He was still there as I pulled out and drove off home.
Right, Alan, I'm finished. I'll see you next week.
Peter Morgan had been in the gym nearly 2.5 hours. It was 8:10 when he left and walked down Anchor Street.
I saw this young man again. It was definitely him. I was a bit surprised that he was still there after 2.5 hours.
This time the man had moved to the end of the street, about 100 yards from Ron's house. No one is known to have seen or spoken to Ron that evening, but usually he'd watch television and read his Bible.
More on Newsnight on BBC 2 at 10:30, but that's the 9 o'clock news tonight. Good night.
Next door, the Baileys had an early start ahead of them for their trip to France in the morning.
Once the news was finished at 9:30, we went straight to bed. I think it was about 9:45. I was just dropping off and I heard some knocking on Ron's door. And I remember thinking, I wish they'd shut up because some of us have got to be up early in the morning. And it stopped and I dropped off to sleep.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
In the morning, a couple living 2 doors away were concerned to see Ron's curtains still drawn.
Yeah. Do you think Ron's all right? It's 10:30.
He'd be up by now. Do you think you'd better go and check? Could be ill, you know.
The bath was overflowing and the house had been ransacked. Ron had been strangled and stabbed.
You couldn't imagine anybody doing that to Ron. He was so he wouldn't hurt a fly. I miss him coming round, I miss going out with him. There's a blank. I expect I shall always miss him.
Well, Detective Superintendent, why would somebody want to do that to Ron?
Well, I don't know, really. He's an old man. He hadn't got any enemies as far as I know. He was in the habit of inviting people back to his home address, however, and maybe somebody came back that he fell out with, or maybe a robbery was the motive. I really don't know at this stage.
So it needn't be a local person, you think?
Oh, indeed not. He was in the habit of inviting anyone back to his home, and it could be somebody from outside the area.
Was anything missing?
Well, we had a search of the house and we can't determine that anything was missing. We found £700 hidden in the house, so obviously whoever the person was, they didn't find that money.
Now, the most important thing, of course, is to find the man that so many people saw that night.
Yes, indeed, yes. This man is described as being in his early 20s. He's about 5'8" to 5'9" tall. He's a slim man and he's got long, straight hair, which comes down to his shoulders but curls up at the edges. He's dressed in a beigey colour, grey colour, loose-fitting jacket.
It's a busy area there, so other people may have seen him too.
Very, very busy part of Chelmsford, and anyone could have seen this man lurking in the area.
The other thing you need to know is who may have called at Ron's house that evening.
Yes, there was a knock at the door at about 10 o'clock, we think. Clearly, we would like to identify who that person was knocking at his door.
Is there anything else you can deduce about Ron's killer?
Well, there was a lot of paint left in the address, and a lot of blood was left at the scene. Clearly, this person will be covered in paint and will be covered in blood. And he may have made some efforts to have washed himself in the bath upstairs. So,
which is why the water was left running?
Exactly, yes.
So if somebody remembers somebody coming home covered in white emulsion paint and or blood, it was 8 months ago, remember, on Friday the 15th of April or Saturday the 16th of April. It is, as we said, quite possible that whoever holds the key to this investigation comes from beyond the immediate neighbourhood of Anchor Street and of Chelmsford. So if you do know something, please do ring us. Police officers are here to take your calls, and we're on 0500 600 600 here in the studio. Or you can call the incident room number in Chelmsford, which is 0245 452120. That's 0245, which is the code for Chelmsford, 452120. If you live near Clacton in Essex, you might be able to help with our last case tonight. Simon Shannon was a shy, sensitive young man, a bit of a loner. There seems no possible reason why anyone would hold a grudge against him. But sometime between Wednesday the 3rd and Saturday the 6th of May, he was stabbed to death in his flat. It was only when a neighbour noticed the bottles of milk beginning to accumulate on Simon's doorstep that the police were called.
Simon Shannon was 26 years old. He was found dead in his flat by a police officer on Saturday about 11 o'clock in the morning. He'd been strangled, he'd got serious internal injuries, his throat had been cut. We know that he's lived in the flat in Groom Park for about 5 years. We know that he is an adopted boy. He comes from a big family.
Simon was my son, and as a father you have a special relationship, and all that has been taken from us.
Simon was a very quiet person. He, right from an early age, he'd like to have his own space and his own privacy. He didn't like to be part of a group of people. He liked to be on his own, doing his own thing.
Now the problem is, we don't know very much about Simon since he moved away from his parents' home. What we need to do is find out a lot more about him. So let's get down to Clacton, let's do our inquiries and find out as much as we can.
Simon was about 17 years old when he came to see us. We run like a guest house, and Simon lived with us for about 3 years. And we became very fond of Simon.
And he remained friends with you after he'd left here, did he?
Oh, yes. Simon would come here 2 or 3 times a week. I'd be working away in the kitchen, and all of a sudden Simon would appear out there. He would just stand there. And until I actually looked and saw Simon, he wouldn't knock or ring the doorbell, and I'd just say, "Come on in, Simon." Simon had this amazing talent. He loved to paint. Everywhere you go in this house, Simon's painted something in every room.
We're going to have to find the people that he's given or sold a painting to. We've got a statement here from a woman that saw two men leaving Simon's address on Tuesday, 2nd of May, and one of them was carrying a painting. It's about 4 to 4:15 in the afternoon, and as she entered Green Park, she saw these two men coming up the footpath of Simon's house. She's given a couple of good descriptions.
Anything else that we need to change?
The mouth was smaller.
How about that?
She says in her statement that the man carrying the picture was 25 to 26 years of age, 5'7", medium build, shoulder-length blonde
hair, which was wavy and unkempt. You know, it wasn't brushed. The second man was about the same age, about 26, and he was a bit taller, 5'8" to 9", I'd say, slim build. He had dark collar-length hair, which was wavy, and a bit longer on top.
We now have a better idea of the places he visited. There's two I've come across which are in Clacton. The first one is the Warwick Castle Market, or Boot Fair as it's often known. We've got a lot of sightings of him there in a very distinctive mauve jacket, and also at the library, again in Clacton, and we've got a definite sighting of him there on the Monday morning before the body was found.
Yeah, we've found someone who saw him in Safeway supermarket on Tuesday.
There are other possible sightings of him, but at this stage we don't know if that's just someone that looks like Simon. What's important about
During the first week of the investigation, 2 more witnesses had emerged.
Oh, my left door as up and comes.
I really was quite taken aback. I mean, it was dark and he just took me totally by surprise. He did appear to be waiting for somebody.
What did he look like?
He was about 18 to 23 years old, medium build with a bit of a belly. He was about 5 foot 1 inches tall, and he had light brown or fair hair. He had a rounded face.
Across the road from Simon's flat, the second witness saw something in the small hours of the day Simon's body was found.
And you saw that on Saturday the 6th of May?
Yeah, I was in the kitchen at the time.
And what time was it?
About 3 a.m. As it went across the junction of St Anne's Road, St Mary's Road, I thought it was going to collide with the wall. It looked light in colour, like an old-style minivan.
And why didn't you report this to us early then, Joe?
Well, I didn't really think much of it at the time, until I heard about the guy being found dead across the road.
It's a very difficult situation to come to terms with. I never knew, until this happened, what it meant to be gutted.
Well, Mr. Seal, because Simon was such a quiet sort of person, you presumably feel there's a lot more about him that you need to know.
Yes, he was very shy, and we found out almost nothing about his movements and where he was, who he saw on the Wednesday and the Thursday before his body was found. We know that he's walked around Clacton with a number of different men, only one of whom has come forward, and we need to trace them. And we know that he's written around the country through gay contact magazines, and he's written, trying to make friends in writing. We need to contact these.
So it could be connections anywhere in the UK, in fact.
Yes, there could.
He painted a lot, didn't he? Why do you need to hear from many people he gave or sold paintings to?
He was a very, very talented artist. He's done paintings on commission, he's given paintings away, and we're trying to trace the people who he's done these paintings for, so that we can build up our knowledge on him.
As we can see, he either signed them Simon Shannon or SS or S. Shannon.
Yes, he did.
The 2 specific people, of course, that you want to eliminate from the inquiry are the 2 people we saw in the film, the men coming out of Simon's flat carrying what could have been a painting.
Yes, the one with the blonde hair is described as in his mid-20s. He's of medium build, he's about 5'6", and the man with the darker hair is a little taller. He's about 5'8" or 5'9". The dark hair is longer on top. He's in his mid-20s and he's of medium build.
Right. And you've just discovered now there's another man you need to trace. A new witness has come forward with new information.
Yes, a witness has come forward having seen the first effects of these 2 men, and the man he describes definitely not that blonde man, because he's 6'1" of medium build, but he's got blonde hair, and we know that he's been seen going to Simon's flat on 4 separate occasions between January and May this year.
So this is a sensitive case for you to investigate, isn't it? Particularly as Simon was gay. Some people might feel reluctant to come forward at all.
Yes, I can understand that, but they really shouldn't be, because we will treat them with care, respect and sympathy, and we just want to hear from people who can help us.
Right, thanks. Well, please do ring if you can help at all. We need to hear from you. Here's a studio number, 0500 600 600, or you can contact Essex Police Headquarters, where incidentally there's a gay officer on the investigation team. That number is 01245 452 120. That's 01245, the code for Chelmsford, 452 120.
In British criminal history. You might have seen it highlighted again because of this programme in the newspapers today.
Yes, well, tonight a father and his lone surviving daughter help us appeal about the attack 8 weeks ago in which someone bludgeoned his wife and his other child to death, along with the family dog. Sean Russell is a university lecturer. He's a botanist. His wife, Lynn, was a geologist. And the girls were described as cheerful, bright and popular at school. The tragedy happened on a footpath coming home from school in one of the most rural and scenic parts of Kent. Lynn and her 6-year-old daughter Megan died. Josie, who's 9, survived, though with serious head injuries.
Megan and Josephine had a very bright and happy future ahead of them. It had changed my priorities in life from pursuing work
Megan, Josie, come and have a
to
look
putting
at
my
this.
family first.
Isn't it gorgeous?
Both of us, Lynn and I, were surprised that they were such lovely children. Maybe we felt that we were a bit, being scientists, we were a bit precise and unemotional. But the children turned out to be very loving.
So it goes like that. That's right. That, then that, then that, then that. That's right, and there's a little tiny bug inside. Yeah. Come on, let's go and look at the larkspur. Don't think you've seen those, have you? No. No, you too busy playing tag. I'll show you
My wife was, well, I've had so many wonderful letters from people around the world saying how much they admired her, how strong a character what she was, how principled. She was very academically brilliant, but from the minute Josephine was born, she gave up her job and she became completely committed to bringing up the family.
Hey, how was the swimming? Yeah, it was really good. Ashley won.
Oh, excellent. Well
you should have
done.
seen me, Mum.
Oh, what about you? Oh, dear. Never mind. Better luck next time.
That Tuesday, the 9th of July, Lynn picked up her children from the village school at Goodnesston. They regularly walked home, a half an hour's jaunt across the country. About 20 minutes later, 4:20, a driver suffering from hay fever remembers a woman, 2 girls and a dog joining the Aylsham to Staple Road. This is Buckland Lane near Goodnesston, some 8 miles outside Canterbury. The date again, Tuesday the 9th of July. Were you around here at that time? Do you remember seeing the Russells or anyone else?
Look, can you see it there?
Isn't
there.
it
There's
cute?
a rabbit. Oh, isn't it sweet? Come on then.
And it's got pasta and from what, salad? Yeah. And cheese. All right.
The last steps taken by the Russells were along this track, used regularly by locals, known as Cherry Garden Lane.
Look, when we get in, you 2 rush upstairs and get changed, and I'll get to...
Flowers still mark the spot where the family was attacked. Lynn and Megan died, as did the dog. Josie was so badly injured that at first she was thought to be dead too. Since the murders 2 months ago, police have pieced together a great deal, but they now need new leads on 3 separate sightings. The first is back along the Aylsham to Staple Road. A woman came across a beige car pulling away from a junction that led to the murder scene.
It was going really slowly.
Oh, come on.
So slow that I had to brake and change down gears. And then I was right behind him.
What are you looking at?
I noticed that he was looking at me from his wing mirror.
Yours.
He looked so agitated and really angry. And even when I turned to go around the corner, I noticed that he was still looking at me to check if I was going to follow him.
About half a mile away, there's a local landmark outside Chillenden village. At about the same time, a woman was driving out of the village on Cave Lane and approaching the windmill when she saw a man standing by the road. She then saw him cross the road. His path may have taken him from the murder scene in these woods. He was heading roughly towards the Rolling Court area, about half a mile away. That's where a farm worker saw a car.
That's when I noticed a man standing at the end of his car, looking around, acting suspicious. He was up and down the bank, looking across the fields, all around him.
Like the one seen earlier, the car was beige.
He started to jog down the road towards my direction, so I looked away because I didn't want to see him staring at me. Right? When I looked back up, he was running back towards his car. Just the way the man was acting, really, like, suspicious. I knew he'd been up to something, either hiding something. Just didn't know at the time. I took the dog round for a walk, about a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes after. Walking up, and I was looking where he was parked, where he was standing. And then the dog pulled in towards the edge, and I noticed a bag being stuffed in the bushes.
The bag contained blood-stained strips of towel, and the blood was from the Russells. In every sense, the family has been destroyed.
I could never have that again. Not as full and complete a family life. I don't believe I'll ever find that again. It's like hopefully, half of my life has come to an end and I start a new half from a much more impoverished point. The gold I have left is Josephine. Mid to late July. I just have to look at her to see the way she's got better so quickly. That's what gives me strength to carry on. But I cannot make head nor tail of why a woman and 2 children and a dog would be attacked in that manner in the open countryside.
Why? I think that's a word on everyone's lips. Detective Chief Inspector Dave Stevens, these are despicable murders. The intention was to slaughter almost an entire family.
Yes, it was. It's very hard to find words to describe the horror and brutality of this despicable crime. Lynn Russell was bludgeoned over 20 times, probably with a hammer. Any one of those blows would have caused her death. Young Megan, an equal number of blows, each of which could have caused her death. Josephine witnessed that. She witnessed her mother and her sister being killed. They even killed her pet dog.
And she will be able to provide some crucial information, you hope?
Well, I've got to say, and what is good news about this is Josephine has made a remarkable recovery, and I do believe in the very near future she'll be speaking to us.
Now, you have those 3 important leads to follow up, all within about half an hour of the murder. Crucially, the one of the chap acting very strangely beside the parked car.
Yes, he was acting strangely and for some considerable length of time, about 10 minutes. The thing that's so crucial about that is that we found the towel in which contains the blood of our victims.
Now, another beige or light-coloured car was seen about 15 minutes earlier, and the driver behind that car was able to give you a very good description of the driver.
A very good description indeed. He was described as in his 20s or 30s, fair complexion, ruddy. Perhaps the most noticeable feature about him was his hair. It was light in colour, perhaps even ginger, with a noticeable fringe, and he was wearing a red T-shirt.
Do you think the car was the same in both situations?
I think there's every chance it was. It wasn't very far away, and it was described very similarly.
So what did the car look like, actually?
The car was light in colour, medium-sized, perhaps an escort-type vehicle. I think one of the most prevalent features about it was an anti-static strip, which is basically a piece of rubber that comes down from the back bumper onto the road to avoid travel sickness. Think it might have had a GB sticker, probably quite old, maybe a B-registered car. Headrests with oblong holes.
Now, the other sighting near Chillenden village, a different description of a man, but possibly involved as well.
It was a different description. This could be a vital witness. It also could suggest maybe there were two offenders.
Now, I know you've made appeals over the weeks for several witnesses to come forward, more information, but at the end of the day today, you want to make a very personal appeal, don't you?
I do indeed. I would appeal to anybody who may be a family member, maybe a close friend of the person responsible for this. When this happened, I think blood would have appeared on clothing. I think maybe the offender could be injured. But I think psychologically, this person must be damaged in some way. And my appeal tonight is anybody who's got the slightest idea at all, please, please come forward. Pick the phone up tonight and call us.
Dave, thank you very much. Well, we all here can only echo that. Please call if you can help, if you have any information. 0500 600 600. It's a free call number here, live to the studio. 0500 600 600, or the incident room in Kent, which has been set up especially for Crimewatch calls. That's 01622 654 321. That's easy to remember. Maidstone 654 321. Which astonished and sickened the whole nation. On a sunlit afternoon, Lynn Russell, her daughters Josie and Megan, and their dog Lucy were waylaid as they walked home from school and then slaughtered. Somehow Josie survived, and as you may well have seen on the news today and in the newspapers, Kent Police have asked us to make another full-scale national appeal. It includes parts of what we showed you last year, but it's now enriched with new witness information. Above all, there's what Josie herself has been able to contribute.
Oh, right. In those early days, I wasn't sure at all that she would survive. So the fact that you now see a bouncy little happy girl is, well, miraculous, really, was the only word I could think of to describe it. Right from stage one, I thought, if I've got to care for a brain-damaged child who is totally incapable, doesn't worry me, that's what I will do. Now, I'm coping with a child who gives me the real runaround. I mean, I'm very happy that she is showing the normal ups and downs of any child of her age. Show us how high you can go.
No, I can just go up there.
Yeah? Right, I'll look after your sweets and I promise not to eat them.
Okay, I'll go up and down. Okay?
Yeah.
It's this. Here.
People have talked about her having an engaging mix of girlishness and sort of tomboy-like traits, but I think that's quite a nice mixture in a child, especially of her age.
3, 3. 10 is.
Very fair.
It's very difficult sometimes to remember that this child has had this massive head injury. And there have been times when I've been utterly amazed at her recall and how she's been able to show us what's happened, and even more amazed, absolutely staggered and really taken aback that she's actually been able to put it into words now. She's never really deviated from what she's been showing us. Now, of course, she's actually able to talk and verbalise about what did happen to her. And that's made it even more chilling, really.
So how many lengths did you have to swim?
100 metres.
Really? My goodness me, that's a long way.
So this then is what can now be pieced together. Tuesday, July the 9th, coming home from school in Goodnestone between Canterbury and Deal. Josie remembers the journey. With both parents being scientists, it was always something of a nature trail.
So when's your next swimming class? Oh, that's lovely.
Next week.
Next week? Okay.
A woman driving on their route remembers that day too. She stopped because of hay fever and saw a woman, 2 children and a dog join Buckland Lane, the Aylsham to Staple Road. Josie has now confirmed they walked that way that afternoon. It should be 30 minutes walk from school to home with just this short stretch of road and then back across the tracks between the fields.
Look at you, you're so scruffy.
Just before they turned off, a local teacher saw them.
I always travel home from my work in the afternoons along a lane that runs from the back of Goodnestone to Chillenden. As I passed the end of Cherry Garden Lane, I looked down. I saw a figure in green or brown clothes. It was unusual seeing anyone there, and what I especially remember are these bright skipping figures trotting along in the sunlight.
You look lovely. I'm scruffy too.
I drove on past Nucket's Wood, and I saw, pretty sure it was on that day, an orangey-red car.
She was surprised to find the car was empty. It's a strange place to want to park.
Don't know. No sign of your woodpecker today, is there? No.
And now the startling evidence from Josie.
Follow you too.
Got any money?
No, I haven't got anything with me.
I want some money.
Well, look, I'll go home and get you some.
No.
Go, run.
Josie says the man ran after her and caught her. She was taken with the others through the trees. They were tied up. The dog was strung up by its lead, and the man then began to beat them with a hammer. A little later, a local resident had to slow down as a car pulled out in front of her. It was coming from the direction of the murder scene.
Come on.
He was staring hard at her, and she vividly recalls his face. This is the e-fit she compiled last year, and police today revealed that Josie has been shown this and says it's very like the man who ambushed and attacked her. He's in his 30s with chubby cheeks. His hair was gingery blonde and straight with a short fringe. Hours later, when the massacre had been discovered, it seemed everyone was dead. But a doctor found Josie still had a pulse.
You're used to seeing your child as a bright, fairly perfect individual, and when you see someone battered black and blue, covered in blood and stitches and, so they're virtually unrecognisable. It was only Josie's freckles that told me it was her at all and not her sister, because I didn't know when we first went to the hospital which one of the girls it was going to be awaiting me there. But it's a terrible thing just by chance that she is the one who survived, that she is the one who, it's all had to happen to her. Yes, the main victims were my wife and Megan. They died. But Josie is a victim who's had to suffer then and now and further into the future.
A chilling and tragic account, as Sean Russell says, made it even more so because Josie actually remembers what happened. Dave Stevens, a year has passed. You still haven't found the murderer. How have the public helped you in that year?
The public really have helped enormously. Their support has been overwhelming. We pieced together a story which hasn't led to the killer. We still haven't received that vital piece of information that's led to an arrest.
But Josie has now been able to talk. She's been able to give you the information that she can remember. How is that going to help?
She's helped in many ways. In particular, she describes the killer. She describes the killer as looking very similar to our EFIT.
In his 20s or 30s?
That's right. She also describes the car, which is similar to other descriptions that we've had. Although the colour is somewhat different, Josie certainly describes a red car, but of course witnesses, non-traumatised witnesses, can get colours wrong, of course.
And what about the motive and his manner? What did she say about that?
Well, for the first time, we have a description of motive. The man asked for money. Was this a petty thief? Was this a person in the area that was looking to burglar a house, perhaps? Also, there were some other features about this that were very, very interesting. There were things about his demeanour. He was very calm when he first approached Lynn and the children. And also, when he was binding Josie, he actually said, "Are they too tight? Are your bindings too tight?" Is this a man who's obviously overtly violent? Maybe not.
Possibly a man, if it was to be believed, with a milligram of compassion in a situation
Perhaps,
like this.
yes. Perhaps, as I say, it's not somebody who's obviously violent.
Now, a year has passed, as we've said. People have had plenty of time to come to you with information. You haven't had that vital shred of evidence. Who are you appealing to tonight?
Well, I'm really appealing to anybody with information, however small. People do say, well, I don't want to waste the police time. But of course, we are the best judge of that. A small piece of information linked with other information could cause the vital breakthrough. But in particular, I think I'm appealing to somebody who may have an idea as to who the killer is. Perhaps a wife or a mother or a close friend. It takes an enormous amount of courage to come forward, to come to the police and say, I think it is a particular individual. Can I reassure the public that your call will be treated in confidence? Your safety is paramount to us. We've trained officers who will take that call. Please, can I implore you to come forward, pick up that phone now and give us that information.
Dave Stevens, thank you very much. There is forensic evidence which can actually eliminate the person if it isn't that man. Now, please don't hesitate. We obviously have to catch this person. 0500 600 600. That's our free call number here to DCI Dave Stevens and his colleagues. Or call the incident room on 01622 654 321. It'd be wonderful if we could catch this person 1 year on today. That's Maidstone 654 321.
Lynn Russell and the savage attack on Josie. We can tell you more about what led to his arrest. It was Crimewatch's second appeal on the case. The first to produce new witnesses, but frankly by now the inquiry had almost run into the ground. So this time we pieced together all the clues about the killer's habits, and specifically we appealed for psychiatrists or anyone who might recognise the patterns of behaviour. One psychiatrist called in, startled by the similarities with a former patient. The name he gave, Michael Stone, was new to the inquiry and immediately caused a flurry of interest. Stone had been seen with blood on his shirt and had burned his clothing from that day, but couldn't explain why. He knew the remote area where the killings had taken place. He had an appalling history of psychopathic violence and specifically attacks with hammers. On an idyllic summer afternoon, he destroyed a happy family, the sort he'd never had himself.
Near Stansted in Essex. In the night, something terrible had happened.
Hello, can I have the place? 16 Gilby Cottages. Gilby Cottages. It's Elsenham. My mummy's dead. Someone's killed her and the door's knocked down. It's my mum. Please send the police.
Julie Foster had been beaten to death as she slept. It seems that murder was the only motive.
She was such an outgoing, she was a people's person. She just loved life. She worked so hard and all for her boys. She absolutely idolised her boys.
Julie was separated and one of her sons lived with his father, but she saw him regularly as she built a new life. Did Julie tell anyone she was worried, either at home or perhaps in Wolverhampton, where she came from, in which she visited just before she died? Did you meet her then in the Crooked House or Chicago's nightclub?
Oh, she was very, very happy, on top of the world. Her father had been down to do a few jobs for her. She just had a few alterations at home. She was really, really happy.
Elsewhere in your horoscope,
Julie made 2 phone calls to an astrology line soon after 1 a.m. But it didn't predict anything unusual, and it seems that she then went to sleep.
She liked looking at her horoscope, and she believed in it as well. She used to say, "Ooh, that's come true," and "Ooh, that's come true," you know, but I still love it.
There are several things you can maybe help with, mostly by elimination. First, a man who was seen several times in Elsenham the week before the murder, casually dressed and always on the phone. Then a red transit, either on Monday the 9th or Tuesday the 10th of July, on the Stansted Road where Julie lived at 3 a.m. At one stage it stopped and blocked the road. Was that you? And third, a man clutching a plastic bag running towards the railway station at 6 a.m, 3 hours before Julie's son found her in her room.
Somebody can't do this and get away with it. I mean, her boys, they've lost their mother.
Ian, before we get into the facts of this case, what about the little boy? How's he coping with all this?
It's really difficult to describe how an 8-year-old can deal with such a horrific scene, the scene that he must have found that morning. All I know is he's been through an incredible ordeal. He's been down, he's been up, but he's working through it, but it's clearly devastated his whole family.
Yeah, absolutely, must have. And in terms of the motive for the murder, I mean, there was no robbery, there's no sexual assault. It appears to have been personal.
Fiona, this was no random killing. It's my view that this was a cold, calculated, sustained attack, and the person that perpetrated this horrendous crime intended to kill Julie Foster.
Because he may well have known her, in fact. I know you've talked to a lot of people in Essex, but you also want to hear from people in Wolverhampton.
That's right. We've heard a lot of people in Essex that she was a popular person, but she came from the Wolverhampton area. She went to school there, and she used to return regularly to socialise with friends and family who still live in the Wolverhampton area. We know that on the weekend before her death, that's the 6th, 7th and 8th of July, that she'd returned to Wolverhampton and was socialising in the areas that you've seen. So we would ask anybody from Wolverhampton who saw her that weekend or spoke to her to ring in tonight.
And it may be possible that the murderer has spoken to people, or his behaviour may have changed. I mean, just imagine if his girlfriend, say he's got a girlfriend, if his girlfriend is watching this tonight and realises what he could have been up to. I wouldn't want to be that person's girlfriend. I mean, it may be that someone is holding something back out of a misplaced sense of loyalty, perhaps.
Oh, absolutely. I would ask anybody just to search their consciences for the absolute devastation this has caused. Is that person that you're with, that loved one, that partner, have they changed since the 10th of July? Is there something different? Please, just search and ring in tonight.
Just anything that occurs to you.
Absolutely.
Look, it was July the 10th. It was in the small hours. Look in your diary. Remind yourself, what were you doing that day? You may remember something that could be useful to the police. Call 0500 600 600 or 01279 64 1188.
This is the Cross Keys in Redgrave in Suffolk. The couple who ran this place from the summer of '97, it was a dream come true. Their own idyllic little pub in a picture postcard English village. Marilyn Garside bought it with some redundancy money, but not long after she and her husband Jim moved in here, their marriage started to turn sour. The chain of events that followed led to murder.
Marilyn and Jim had long had a difficult relationship, but at first the pub seemed to bring them together as she'd hoped.
But we moved into equal parts, didn't we?
Yeah.
And, you know, we like it.
I started working here about 4 years ago as a barmaid. They were really nice and they really looked after me. He was a womaniser. He thought he could have any woman he wanted. He tried it on with most women who came into the pub and just made a fool out of himself.
You've been acting like a right tart all night.
If you've got something to say to me, don't say it in front of the customers.
The pub was dead after that. The trade went down and it was a real shame.
When the regulars stopped coming, money got tight and the Garsides took a lodger.
There's just no room for anything.
I had no idea what I was walking into and wish I'd not gone in there now. He started off being nice, thanking me, welcoming me, thanking me for what I was doing around the pub and the flat. And then he started being rude and started coming on to me and started threatening me. He said I was his woman.
You ain't here just to clean glasses, darling.
He told her about us on Christmas Day. He said, Lynn, I want you for love and security, and Therese, I want you for sex.
Marilyn was aware of her husband's philandering. Her hopes for the marriage were being crushed.
Lynn stayed here because she was scared of him and she knew deep down what he would do to her if she did leave.
He kept repeating, I could shoot her like a rabbit. Real hate in his voice.
Eventually, Lynn did pluck up the courage to leave, and Jim seemed fairly relaxed about it. The pub was sold and Lynn went back to Essex to live with her son and daughter. A few weeks later, Jim moved in with another woman. Lynn planned a divorce and she agreed to give him half the proceeds from the pub.
She was much happier since she come back from the pub. She was back to her old self and laughing and joking, and she was so full of life again, knowing that he was out of her life, so to speak.
Once back in Essex, Marilyn visited her mum every day.
Sorry I'm late, Mum.
Well, it was so nice to have her back to help me, and I was coping, but I couldn't do the housework.
Don't you want your tea? Oh, leave it till later. Jim just rang, wanting to know where I was.
Oh, yeah.
What do you reckon on that?
Oh, I like that.
Can I help you?
Oh, Lynn! Lynn!
As I drove down the road, it was like something out of a movie scene. There were flashing lights everywhere, people had lined the streets, and I thought, oh my God, what has gone on? And I obviously thought the worst at that stage, but I don't suppose anything could have prepared me for what the worst was.
You all right?
Yes, thank you.
Did you see who did it?
I saw him, but I didn't see his face.
No? Which way did he go?
Well, through the gates.
Yeah, which way did he go once he came through the gates?
I didn't see him then. Actively up. It's devastating to see it happen to your own daughter and to hear it happening.
Jim turned up later that evening and he put his head in my nan's lap and it was just this wailing noise going on, and I was sitting to the side of him and I was just looking at him and I couldn't see one tear rolling down his face.
When I got to Lisa's, they told me.
What did they tell you?
They told me Lynn was dead. She was stabbed. That was it.
There was no signs of sympathy or empathy towards Marilyn at all, or any usual signs of grief.
I knew right from the beginning he was involved in it, from what she told me, but I wasn't allowed to say it because it was hearsay. But I knew what had happened in my heart, I knew.
A week after Marilyn's murder, Jim took possession of her car, moved into her house in Romford and changed the locks to stop her son returning home.
Jim just decided to get rid of all my mum's possessions, all her clothing, just apparently put me into black sacks and threw them out.
Very soon it was apparent that Jim was behind the death of his wife. There was no other reason that we could fathom out for anyone wanting Marilyn dead other than Jim.
But Jim had a firm alibi.
I was out bowling in King's Lynn. I got a call from Lynn's son. He said, Mum's been attacked. I said, I'll be down straight away to the hospital.
We told Crimewatch exactly what we had, that we suspected that Jim was involved and that we were gathering evidence of his involvement in the case. But I still did not know who the killer was, so the programme was directed to assist me identifying the killer.
In an unusual twist, detectives hoped to set an elaborate trap for Jim. They planned to set up a bogus incident room in Norfolk, invite him to watch the programme there, and convince him the net was closing in. They hoped he'd panic and make contact with a hitman. But Jim was already getting rattled. Before Crimewatch went on air, he took a sudden trip to Alicante. As it happens, even without the trick planned by detectives, the programme turned up trumps.
The Crimewatch appeal was a great success. We had over 30 calls, but there was two real golden nuggets of information that come in. One was from a former wife of Jim's who we've not been able to track down. She was able to tell us in great detail the horrendous domestic violence she'd suffered at the hands of Jim, and this gave us evidence of Jim's previous violent behaviour towards women. But secondly, and more importantly, a solicitor contacted us.
Ray? My wife called out to me that the Cross Keys at Redgrave was on the television, and I recalled that I had seen Mrs. Garside. She came to see me and she discussed the fact that she was in an uncomfortable situation. It's unusual for someone to come in and say that they feel that they are being threatened with murder by their spouses, which she did say there were guns on the property and that she was concerned for her safety.
With all this new evidence, when Jim flew back from Spain, the police were waiting for him.
We were able to keep surveillance on him until we were satisfied where he was living, and then we arrested him.
Jim, it's the police.
We didn't charge him at that stage. We questioned him and we released him on bail. And that again was to try and attempt, now that he knew some of the evidence against him, whether he would lead us to the killer.
In fact, it was Jim's phone calls eventually led to his accomplice. The police worked out Jim had 3 phones and had given one to the killer.
We were able to track through the mobile phones a succession of calls from Jim to the killer of Marilyn.
Your wife's killer had the phone you'd been using the day before she was killed.
No comment.
We know that the killer had the phone in the area where Marilyn was murdered, and they thought that no one would be able to establish who had this phone. However, the killer made one fatal mistake, and the killer rang home, a short call to his home address, and through that I was able to establish Richard Bates was the killer of Marilyn Garside.
Richard Bates worked at Fisher's, a frozen food factory, and he had a set of knives for boning meat.
Richard Bates?
Yeah?
DC Galpin, this is DS Pryor. I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something you later rely on in court. Anything you do say will be given as evidence. Come with me, please.
So, who introduced you to Jim Garside?
Teresa. I used to work with Teresa at the factory. First time I met Jim, he came to the car park of Fisher's. I thought, that's nice.
The Mercedes had been stolen, and Jim persuaded Richard Bates to help him drive it to the continent where it was to be sold. It was during that 4-day drive to Greece that the 2 men plotted murder.
You conspired with Richard Bates to have your wife murdered?
No.
Richard Bates is skint. You manipulated him. You offered him money to be involved in the murder of your wife.
And there was more compelling evidence to come. Partial DNA found at the crime scene matched that of Richard Bates. The chain of events was now becoming clear. A week before Lynn's murder, Richard Bates went to her mum's house to plan it. Then on the day, he waited outside for her to arrive.
Hello, Jim.
Yeah?
She's not come. I've been waiting all afternoon. 12 o'clock you said she'd get here.
All right, I'll call you back. All right, where are you?
I'm in Romford shopping for new shoes. Are you bearing up, all right?
Yeah, I'm all right, yeah.
Look, I'm late for Mum. I'll see you tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah, see you tomorrow. Sit tight. She's on her way.
Can I help you?
It's done.
In June, after a 3-month trial at the Old Bailey, Jim Garside and Richard Bates were found guilty of murder and sentenced to life.